The Author's POV. Chapter 81, Galxicus, 4. I am not outstanding. If we exclude the fact that I practiced a 5-star manual, nothing about me was outstanding. Not my stats. Not my physique. Not my skills. Compared to Kevin, who had a system aiding him all the times, or the other main characters who had every resource they could ask for, I had nothing. I wasn't blessed by the plot armor like the protagonists were. Everything I got was through shedding blood, sweat and tears. I gained everything that I got by either putting my life on the line to get it or by sacrificing something important. I had to make do with what I had. When facing an opponent like Alex, who had a lot more combat experience than I had, and moreover set a handicap to myself, I had to fight using everything that I had available at my disposal. Thus I chose to fight a mental battle. Since I knew that despite being weaker than me, Alex had more experience than me, I chose to beat him mentally. Everything started with our first clash. Right when I broke his nose using the scabbard of my sword. That's when the mental beatdown started. By winning the very first clash, I had already started setting the tone of the battle. The confidence he had since the beginning of the fight had now diminished, and what replaced it was both shock and anger. It was always pride. Having read many novels with arrogant young masters, I knew that for prideful individuals like him, just a small loss was enough to influence their actions. And I was right. From that point on, his attacks started becoming more predictable and his emotions started to influence his decisions. I then proceeded to block his every attack. With every thrust or stab of his spear, one of my rings would continuously block his every attack. The more he attacked, the more he realized he couldn't do anything. He was helpless. Once again, his confidence took another hit and self-doubt started to set into his mind. Frustration, annoyance, rage, impatience. As those emotions started to set into his mind, with every minute the fight continued, he became sloppier. His weak mentality led to his loss. The opening I created with my rings could have easily been spotted if he had thought about it carefully. With him being someone who had fought many battles before, he should have easily spotted it. However, because of how unstable his mental state was, he ignored that scenario and went for the win. He fell for such an obvious trap and I capitalized on it. Staring at Alex, who was on the ground passed out, beneath my feet, a strange feeling surged from within me. So this is how it feels to win, huh? I wasn't outstanding. I didn't need to be outstanding. I didn't need the plot armor to constantly follow me. I didn't need to take all the cheat items for myself. All I needed to do was polish what I had, and make do with it. Engulfing the entire arena, boisterous cheers from the crowd resounded throughout the whole stadium. Phoo. Taking a deep breath, I basked in the moment. I don't dislike this feeling. Entering the stage, the host looked at Alex, who was passed out on the floor, for a couple of seconds before looking at the crowd and announcing. And the winner of the duel is Rendover. Once again, cheers resounded across the stadium as everyone started chanting my name. Ren. 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 Under the barrage of cheers, I looked in the distance and saw my parents cheering with the crowd. Even my father, who was usually stoic, was cheering alongside everyone. Despite all odds, after having fought for 46 minutes, Rendover managed to defeat Alex Cloudburn, a renowned B-ranked prospect brought by our very own Vice Guild Master. As the cameras pointed towards the stands and Martin's face was shown on the big screens of the arena, everyone saw Martin expressionlessly staring at the arena. No one knew his thoughts. He looked completely indifferent to everything. Almost as if what had happened had nothing to do with him. Pointing the cameras back to me, the host continued. Using some unknown technique, Ren created an impenetrable defense that created massive headaches for his opponent Alex. And through. As the host continued speaking and replayed highlights of the match on the big screens, I left the arena and headed back towards the changing room. Just as I set foot outside of the arena, my mother appeared on the pathway to the changing room. Ren. Running in my direction, my mother lunged in my direction and hugged me tightly. Because she was running so fast, the moment she hugged me, it felt as if all the air had been knocked out of me and I took 2 steps back. Oak. Are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere? Releasing me from her hug, my mother patted my body all over to check for any injuries. To be honest, her hug hurt more than whatever Alex did throughout the whole fight. I'm fine. Bitterly smiling, I flexed my arms and reassured her I was fine. That's good. Sighing in relief, my mother looked at me curiously before asking. Ren, when did you get so strong? Listening to her question, my mouth twitched. I couldn't just tell her that this world was based on a novel I created and that I took advantage of my knowledge as the author to take a couple of cheat items. Fortunately, I had already come up with a good excuse beforehand. Mom, did you forget what kind of place I attend? Frowning, my mother fell into deep thought. I know that the Lock is the best academy in the human domain, but you suddenly went from G rank to F rank in less than 3 months. That's not something that can be achieved in such little time. What she said makes sense. It usually took people half to a whole year to increase a rank. Me suddenly jumping a rank in as little as 3 months seems unnatural. Where's Nola? In the end, I could only pretend to be ignorant about her question and shift the topic towards a different topic. She's with you, father, in the stands. Noticing the fact that I was avoiding the question, my mother played along with it. To which I was grateful. Maybe one day I'll come clean and explain to her about what I went through to get as strong as I was now. But it still wasn't the time yet. Especially with everything that was going on with the guild. I wouldn't want them to start worrying. Maybe one day. Ashton City, Northern District, 5 p.m. Inside of a luxurious room, 2 individuals sat facing each other. Sitting on one of the sofas, Martin, with his head held down, recounted the events of today. And that's what happened. After he finished speaking, Martin shut up. He didn't dare utter another word. This wasn't out of choice. It was out of the innate fear he had towards the man that was sitting before him. So Alex failed, huh? Lightly smiling, an old man with light gray hair and light gray goatee tapped on the armrest of his chair. Tap. 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 With every tap of his fingers, Martin felt as if his heart was beating along with it. Cold sweat appeared on his back. Knowing who the man before him was, he wouldn't be surprised if he was suddenly discarded and left for dead somewhere in Ashton City. No, I've already come this far, I can't fail here. Clenching his teeth, Martin lowered his head and tried to apologize. However, before he could do that, glancing in Martin's direction, the old man's deep voice echoed across the room. Don't worry, I'm not mad, it was something that even I didn't expect. Sighing in relief, Martin raised his head and tried to thank the old man. Thank you, Kaowu. Spurt. However, as soon as Martin raised his head, a dagger pierced him in the right eye. Screaming in agony, Martin covered his eye with his hand as blood dripped on the ground. Kawa. Shut up. Glaring in Martin's direction, an enormous pressure bore down on him, causing him to shut up immediately. I've already forgiven you, if you continue screaming it won't just end at one eye. Wiping his hand with a white handkerchief, the old man spoke, to which Martin nodded his head in understanding. Thank you for your generosity. Satisfied, the old man sat back on his chair. So, you're saying that the name of the kid who beat Alex was Ren? Hurriedly nodding his head, Martin answered. Yes. Rendover, Rendover. Repeating the name of the kid who beat Alex a couple of times, the old man thought for a while before turning his attention towards a middle-aged man standing at the entrance of the room. Tim, call Matthew here. As you wish, master. Politely nodding his head, the middle-aged man named Tim quietly left the room. Knock, knock. Soon after, moments after Tim disappeared, someone knocked on the door. Father, did you call me? Slightly opening the door, a youth wearing a grayish-black suit entered the room. He appeared to be in his late teens or so. His face was handsome with a pair of unusually bright eyes that seemed to be able to see through one's heart. The first impression that this youth gave was that he was a refined individual with a bright head on his shoulders. If this youth held a book in his hand, he would likely appear no different from a scholar. Staring at the youth before him with keen interest, a hint of pride appeared in the old man's voice as he asked. Yes, do you by chance know a kid around your age called Rendover? Taken aback by the question, the youth looked at the old man in confusion. Rendover. Yes, that's his name. Smiling widely, Matthew nodded. But of course, we were best friends in middle school. The Author's POV. Chapter 82, Kaisa, 1. Sunday, Galxicus Guild 80th floor. It was the day after the battle between me and Alex had taken place. I was currently in my father's office. Sitting on a large gray sofa, I took a look at the office. On the opposite side of me, my father, working on a large rosewood desk, was busy compiling a stack of paperwork. As he compiled the paperwork on the table, his pen would drift in swift and fluent movements across the papers on his desk. He looked incredibly efficient. Staring at my father's desk, at eye level, a group of papers, a stack of waiter pads, a portable laptop, and multiple monitors neatly stood on top of the large desk. On the floor, below the desk, lied a PC tower that hummed quietly. On small occasions, blue light would twinkle on top of the PC tower signaling that its power was on. On the wall to the right, post-it notes appeared on top of a wooden board with several labels and photos marked on it. Although the office wasn't the most organized, the number of papers on his desk just went to show how much work my father was investing every day to keep the guild afloat. Ren. As I was busy looking around, disrupting the silence, my father spoke. Yes. Putting the pen in his hand down, my father's obsidian eyes stared at me. What do you think of our guild? Be honest. Taken aback for a second, I leaned back on the sofa. What did I think of the guild? Honestly, it was bad. From what I've seen yesterday and today, the guild wasn't united. It was split into different factions and there was an evident power struggle. I didn't even know how they managed to keep what was happening within the guild a secret from outsiders. I would bet bronze or silver graded guilds would love to capitalize on this piece of news. I mean, why wouldn't they? Although Galxicus was failing, if the guilds were looking to expand, absorbing Galxicus was the most optimal thing to do. Especially since right now, Galxicus was only a guild in name. It was merely an empty title. It was like a shop that sold nothing. The only reason why it was still standing today was because of my parents' efforts. But that wasn't going to last long. Even they will crumble under all of that work. As my thoughts reached thus far, I couldn't help but be reminded of the fact that my parents were still working on a Sunday. Not once did they rest. If things proceeded to continue like this, I wouldn't give the guild a year before it would be forced to dissolve. Hesitating for a bit, I looked at my father's earnest expression and shared my thoughts. If I had to be honest, terrible. The guild members instead of being united are clearly split into factions and... As I recounted my honest thoughts, nodding his head, Ronald sighed. Judging from the way you are speaking, I can already guess you've already figured out how things are going within the guild. Glancing at the piles of paper below him, a trace of sadness appeared in my father's eyes as he murmured. Sadly, the guild is in a state of heavy decline. Stacking the papers on his desk neatly, leaning on his chair, my father looked towards the ceiling. My plan was to one day let you be the guild master of this guild. I wanted to pass this guild on to you so that in the future you would carry it to greater success, but it seems like it was all my wishful thinking. Glancing towards the drawer of his desk, my father took out a silver key from his pocket and inserted it into the drawer. Clank. Unlocking the drawer, my father slid it open. Taking out a thick green book, my father glanced at it for a second. A hint of nostalgia appeared in his eyes. When I saw you fight yesterday, I observed that despite having a great defense, you lacked something important. At first, I thought it was an attacking art, but after I put more thought into it, I figured that this book would be more beneficial to you. Taking one last glance at the book, my father handed it to me. Here. Shocked, I looked at my father. Tuffy looked stoic and indifferent, his eyes carried warmth within them. Whatever he was giving me, it was definitely precious to him, and now he was giving it to me. Thank you. Nodding solemnly, I took the green book. I will never forget his favor. Drifting steps. Movement art that progresses with each step. With every step taken, user speed will increase. Unless user stops, speed will continuously increase until the user either runs out of mana or due to injury. TSSSS. This was precisely what I needed. A movement art. Was this a coincidence? Glancing at my father, he had an all-knowing look. As though knew from the very beginning that I needed this. I guess he wasn't a guild master for nothing. After having only watched me fight once, he could already detect what I was missing. With this movement art, my strength would see another boost. Especially since I was already near breaking through to F+ rank, I could feel that I was only a few days away. As I was busy admiring the book, pointing at the book, my father said. That movement art is one of the guild's top arts, and I'm technically not supposed to be giving it to you. Reason being that it's against the rules, as I would normally need to acquire the permission of the board before being allowed to even show you this, but... Pausing, turning around, my father looked at the window of the office. Towards the busy streets of Ashton City. In a firm voice, he said. But looking at the state of the guild, I don't see the need for me to be reserved. With his back still facing me, my father, Ronald Dover, resolutely looked at the people coming in and out of the building. After a short pause, he turned around and in a solemn voice he said, "I want to set up a different branch for our guild." A branch? Taken aback, I tilted my head in confusion. If the guild was failing, why set up a branch? That just didn't make sense. "Yes, and you're going to lead it." "What?" Shocked, I looked at my father with wide eyes. What kind of joke was this? I was still in my first year in the lock. How could I possibly have enough time to run a branch? Asking me to operate a branch would mean that I wouldn't even have time to attend my lectures, let alone classes. Watching the streets below him, Ronald Dover smiled. "Ren, in this world, you're either a pawn or a king. You can either be someone who continuously follows others' will or be someone who dictates their own will. Although setting up a branch of a failing guild seems like a stupid idea, in reality, my goal isn't actually to set up a branch." Noticing a subtle hint within his words, a sudden thought occurred to me as I looked at my father in shock. "You don't mean?" "Yes, I want you to set up a mercenary group." "A mercenary group?" "A group composed of talented unaffiliated individuals who do tasks for money. Be it killing certain monsters, villains, or corrupt individuals. They were the ones you would call." Mercenary groups were just as popular as guilds, with some being just as influential as some of the top guilds in the human domain. And my father was asking me to set up a mercenary corp. Placing my hand on my chin, I thought about it. If it's a mercenary group, it was possible. Although hard, it was possible. Setting a mercenary group wasn't easy. There were 2 requirements to set up a mercenary corp. Have at least one individual with a hero certification or get a recommendation from a graded guild. Though I couldn't get a hero certification as I had not yet graduated from the academy, with the recommendation of my father, setting up a mercenary corp wasn't a pipe dream. Creating my own organization. The idea did sound tempting. Creating an organization filled with people that I could control. The more I thought about it, the more I started realizing that this was what I actually needed. After realizing that things did not always go according to plans, rather than remaining passive, why not set up my own organization? An organization that operated in the shadows as my henchmen. If Kevin and the rest were the light, why not be the shadow? Licking my dry lips, I crossed my legs and thought. If I was going to do it, I may as well go big. With my knowledge of the future, I knew certain people who didn't have much time in the novel but were in fact extremely talented in their own right. With my very own organization backing me, I wouldn't need to worry about problems that kept haunting me since the very first day I reincarnated. Yes, why didn't I think about this before? Firming my mind and looking at my father, I said, "All right, I'll do it." Nodding his head, and seeing my resolute eyes, a smile appeared on Ronald Dover's face. Good choice. Leaving my father's office, I already started thinking of all the talented people whom I could poach into joining future mercenary corp. I already had a couple of people in mind. Just as I was about to make a list of the people I wanted to join my mercenary group, at that moment, my phone vibrated. Turning on the phone, I checked who was calling me. Soon a smile appeared on my lips. Just the person I was looking for. Small Snake appeared on the caller ID. "Hello." As soon as I picked up the phone, Small Snake's face popped up on a hologram screen. "Yo, it's been a while. What's up? Where are you? I can hear a lot of people around you." "Me? I'm at my parents' guild." I raised my phone and showed him the nearby scenery. "Been sorting out the family stuff at the guild." "Really?" "Yup, anyways, I need to talk to you about something." "Go ahead." "Not on the phone, meet me near my guild in the northern district." "That's kind of far." "Trust me, you won't regret what I am going to say to you." Seeing me smile mysteriously, Small Snake's expression turned skeptical. In the end, he nodded. "All right." "Perfect, all right, see you in a bit." Smiling triumphantly, I hung up the phone. This better be W. Tack. Turning off the phone, a trace of a smile appeared on my face. Putting on my coat, I went towards a nearby cafe, and sent Small Snake my location. I wonder how big my organization will become. The Author's POV. Chapter 83, Kaisa, 2. Thank you for coming. Taking a sip of my latte, I glanced toward Small Snake, who was sitting on the opposite seat to mine. With his arms and legs crossed, Small Snake looked at me in annoyance. This better be worth it. It took me 30 minutes to get here. I am a busy man. PTTFFF. Covering my mouth, I almost laughed out loud. Stop deluding yourself. Apart from me, there's no one else you currently manage. Speechless, Small Snake's demeanor crumbled as he couldn't find any words to use to refute what I said. It was true. In the latter half of the novel, when Small Snake meets Kevin, he was still unemployed. This meant that apart from me, there was no one else he managed. Although he wasn't lying about taking 30 minutes to arrive here, he wasn't busy at all. He was merely pretending to look busy. With a vein popping from his forehead, Small Snake extended his hand in my direction. Get to the point. Nodding my head, I suddenly turned serious. Locking my fingers together, I rested my chin on them. Staring right into Small Snake's green eyes, I solemnly said, I want to create a mercenary group. Congrats. Thanks, and you're going to be in it. Nodding his head repeatedly, a smile appeared on Small Snake's face. It was the smile of someone that had transcended humanity. So let me get this straight. You made me come all the way here to join your mercenary group that still hasn't been founded nor has any members. Yeah. As expected of someone as smart as Small Snake. He instantly understood what I said. Who said I'm the only member? There are others. No, not yet. Small Snake stared at me with a dumbstruck expression. I scratched the back of my head and took a sip of my latte and murmured. They will eventually join. HAAA. Speechless, Small Snake's sigh lengthened as he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It's always like this with him. Always making proposals that didn't make sense and yet still looking so confident. Almost certain that whatever he was planning was going to succeed. Small Snake just didn't understand. Where did that confidence come from? Sigh, I'm sorry but I'll have to refuse. In the end, even though he was slightly tempted, Small Snake refused. More than him not wanting to join. It was more like he couldn't join. In the first place. If it wasn't for his current situation, he would have never worked in the black market in the first place. I mean, why would someone as talented as him work as a low-leveled broker in the black market? It just didn't add up. Do you have anything else to say? Not bothered by Small Snake's refusal, I exaggeratedly sighed and murmured in a tone that Small Snake could hear. Sigh, and here I was doing this for your own good. Shaking his head, finishing his drink, Small Snake prepared to leave. I guess you really just called me to waste time. Leaning on my seat, and staring at Small Snake that was preparing to leave, in a voice that only we could hear, I said. I know you're being hunted by the monolith. What? Plaque. Standing up abruptly, the chair behind Small Snake fell. Pointing at me, his voice shook. How did you know? Shoo. Putting my finger on my mouth, I motioned for Small Snake to calm down and sit down. First, calm down. Look around you, everyone is looking. Glancing towards his surroundings, Small Snake noticed everyone staring at him. Sorry. Apologizing, Small Snake took a deep breath to calm his mind down. He then proceeded to rub his forehead. All right, I'm better. After a short pause, while still standing up, a small frown emerged on his brows. Looking at me, he said. How did you know? Taking a look at the half-filled latte in my hand, I twirled the cup. How did I know? Well, let's just say that you're not the only person that can dig into someone else's past. Well, more or less. As long as I wrote about them, I knew their backstory. Anyhow, if you join me, I can help you with regards to the monolith situation. Frowning, after a short pause, Small Snake couldn't help but once again ask to get confirmation. When you mentioned the monolith, why you mean the same monolith I'm thinking about? Smiling mysteriously, I nodded. Yup, that monolith. The same monolith that you're thinking of in the Union equivalent for villains. TSSSSS. Sitting back down, Small Snake's face became grim. His reaction was understandable. The reason why Small Snake was working in the black market was precisely because of the monolith. A hidden organization that houses the strongest and most powerful villains in the human domain. Also known as the Anti-Union. After having been caught trying to infiltrate the ranks of the monolith, a massive manhunt for Small Snake's head began. Because of how powerful the monolith was, Small Snake could only helplessly lay low inside of the black market. The only organization that could barely protect him. If it weren't for the fact that Small Snake had connections with some of the higher-ups of the black market, he would have long been caught by the monolith. With their aid, he managed to secure himself a job at a brokerage firm where he could lay low. If you choose to trust me like before, I promise you won't regret it. Hesitating for a bit, Small Snake looked at me before saying, how did you find out about my circumstances and the monolith? Leaning back on my chair, I smiled. Oh, trust me. There's no one that knows more about the monolith than I do. Well, I was the author of this world after all. Because of how important they become in the second volume of the novel, I had an in-depth understanding of the monolith. Who their members comprised of, where their secret hideout was located, and what plans they were brewing. I knew everything. And of course, I also knew about Small Snake's circumstances. He was after all an important character that appeared in the latter half of the novel. Staying silent for a couple of seconds, Small Snake deeply looked at me. Though I couldn't read his thoughts, I knew that he was currently calculating his options. He could either trust me or carry on with whatever he was doing in the black market. In the end, his decision came down to how much he trusted me. You. After a couple of more seconds. Taking a long and exhausted sigh, Small Snake extended his hand in my direction. I don't even know why I'm doing this, but, alright, if you keep good on your promise I will join you. Haha, I knew you would make the right choice. Extending my hand forward, we both shook hands. The first member of my mercenary group had officially joined. After we shook hands, Small Snake's mood brightened up a bit. Thinking for a bit, looking at me, he asked, "What will the name of the group be?" Without hesitation I responded, Kaisa. Kaisa. Yeah, named after the goddess of chess. Frowning, Small Snake placed his hand under his chin as he couldn't help but be confused. The goddess of chess? Why chess? Smiling, I turned on the holographic function of my phone. Soon a chessboard was projected before us. Pointing towards the chessboard, I said, "The mercenary group will consist of 8 main seats. Each according to the main chess pieces on this board." Pausing to make sure Small Snake was following, I continued. "There will be 1 king, 1 queen, 2 rooks, 2 bishops, and 2 knights. Any other member will be a pawn. Depending on ability, I will assign them a seat ACC-. Nodding his head, Small Snake cut me in the middle of my sentence. "Let me guess, you're the king, right? If so, who are the other members you're thinking of recruiting, and who's going to be the queen?" Glancing at Small Snake for a brief moment, I seriously nodded my head. "I understand. If you're that adamant about becoming the queen, I don't mind." Nodding his head, Small Snake kept his cool. Sarcasm and teasing barely bothered him now, probably because he suffered way too much shame and humiliation. Letting go of his pride was hard at first, but after realizing that there was no way for him to retaliate, he could only ignore it. Especially since he was now his boss. "No, I'm good." TSK, how boring. Clicking my tongue, I continued. "You are my first member, and after a bit of thinking I decided that you will be a bishop." Frowning slightly, he couldn't help but ask, "Why a bishop?" Smiling, I didn't elaborate. Didn't want him to realize what his role was going to be before it was too late. Because I said so. It wasn't really related to chess, but typically bishops were people who were generally entrusted with a position of authority and oversight. Precisely the role that Small Snake will play in our group. Though he was not strong. He had connections and a bright head on his shoulders. With his talents, the mercenary group will be able to expand accordingly without any issues with regards to finding the right connections for supplies, potions, and other things that generally gave headaches to guilds and other mercenary groups. If I had to put this bluntly, he was the group babysitter. After explaining a few more things to Small Snake, glancing at my watch, I checked the time. Plaque. Finishing my drink, I stood up. Alright, I guess that's that for now. I had a lot to do. Setting a mercenary group wasn't easy. There were a lot of things I had to get done by the end of the day. Such as come up with a list of people who I wanted to recruit to my group. Find an appropriate location for the group. Register the group name. Only after I completed all of those tasks would I finally be able to actually start recruiting members. Fortunately, I already had an idea of who to recruit, meaning that right now the main priority was finding an appropriate location and officially registering the name of the group so that we could finally be considered a proper mercenary group. Standing up, I bid farewell to Small Snake and headed towards the exit of the cafe. Just right before I separated from Small Snake, I said, "Meet me tomorrow, and I'll give you a list of people I want to recruit." "Okay." Nodding his head, Small Snake watched my figure leave the cafe. As he did, he couldn't help but think, "Hopefully, I made the right decision." The author's POV. Chapter 84, Kaisa, 3. Mercenary Corp name, Kaisa. Grade, I, 2, 3, 4, V. Members, 1. Founder, Rendover. I stood under the blazing sun and the blue sky, enjoying the clear and warm Ashton City weather. Exiting an enormous building, I glanced at an azure-colored card in my hand. The card was made out of metal, and on its back was a large Roman I engraved on it. This signified the rank of the mercenary group. Since this world likes to rank everything, Mercenary Corps 2 were ranked. They went from 1 to 5, with 5 being the best. Anyhow, ranks aside, because Small Snake had still not officially joined the guild yet, the members' count on the card was 1. Me. When he joins, the card will change accordingly. One of the things that I was a bit hesitant about when creating the corp was whether I should use an alias or my name for the founder section of the card. Ideally, my goal was to make this one of the strongest mercenary groups in the human domain. I wasn't sure if making my name known would be ideal or not, but in the end, I decided to use my name. There was no reason for me to hide my identity. After all, I did create this as an affiliate with Galxicus. Even if I tried to hide it, people would easily be able to deduce who I was. Alright, now that I successfully established the Mercenary Corp, it is time for the next task. Putting the card back into my pocket, I checked my watch. 6:45 p.m. Seeing the time, I moved towards my next location. I had made an appointment to meet with someone for a possible place that I could use for the headquarters for Kaisa. I had checked many places through my phone, but I thought that the one I was currently heading to fit my ideal for the headquarters the best. Welcome. Arriving inside of a large warehouse, a fat middle-aged man wearing a wrinkled black suit came to greet me. Taking out a white handkerchief from his pocket, he wiped the sweat that had accumulated on his forehead. So, staring at me with anticipation, the fat middle-aged man fiddled with his hands. It was evident from his demeanor that he wanted to get rid of the place at all cost. Glancing at the space, I nodded. The warehouse, although empty, was extremely large. It was located quite a distance away from the main city, and apart from a couple of roads and greenery there really wasn't anything around it. This was precisely why I liked it. Plain and boring. Perfect place to hide the location of the headquarters. Alright, I'll buy it. Checking my account balance, and confirming that I had just about 6 million U in my bank, I decided to directly buy the warehouse with most of the money I had. In total, the warehouse cost me 4,200,000 U. Though expensive, I didn't mind it. That's how much I liked the place. I could have rented a different place, but after a bit of thinking, I opted to buy my own space so that I could do the appropriate modifications. Money wasn't necessarily a problem for me. I could easily make what I lost back with stocks again. With Small Snake helping me, the repercussion of my actions wouldn't come back and bite me as no one would be able to trace me. In fact, with my knowledge, I could easily make enough money to pay back my parents' guild debt. However, their debt was probably the least of their worries. With the internal strife going on inside of the guild, paying off the debt would do nothing. Moreover, I also wanted to shroud my organization with a veil of mystery. With this place being hidden, it added an element of mystery to those that want to find out more about our organization. I didn't want to create an organization that had a lot of members. I wanted to keep to maximum of 20 elite members. Members that stood out from the rest. Quality over quantity. I wanted to reach a point in the future that whenever one of our members moved, organizations would tremble. Kaisa, warehouse. So, how do you like the place? Glancing at Small Snake beside me, I asked for his opinion as I showed him the warehouse I bought. Well, why? Trying to find words to say, Small Snake was speechless. The location of the warehouse was in the middle of nowhere, and the place was empty. It was sad. Very sad. Compared to every other organization Small Snake had been to, even the worst one wasn't as bad as this. Glancing at his employer beside him, Small Snake really couldn't understand what was in his mind. Once again, he couldn't help but start doubting his decision to join him. You don't really need to answer. Was just asking out of politeness. Already bought the place after all. Looking at his reaction and shrugging my shoulders, I took a pile of papers from a folder I had on me and gave them to Small Snake. Here. What's this? Taking the papers, Small Snake frowned. After flipping through them, he couldn't help but tilt his head in confusion. Why them? Don't ask questions, find information about them and send them to me. You won't understand unless you see them in action. Okay. Nodding his head, Small Snake sighed before taking a better look at the lists before him. What I just handed Small Snake was a brief description of a few individuals I wanted him to find information on. The list I had given him contained a lot of names, but I needed to narrow it down. I needed to take their characters into consideration, as well as the likelihood of being able to entice them to join Kaisa. Arrogant or not arrogant? Brave or not brave? Money-driven or not? Everyone was different, and that's why I needed information. Because they were after all extras. Although I wrote about them, I didn't know too much about their backstory. If I wanted to recruit them, I needed to be able to familiarize myself with them better so that I could entice them more convincingly. Ah, by the way, Small Snake. Remembering something, glancing towards Small Snake, I said. I highlighted 3 names in red, those are the top priority. Make sure you give me details about them. From their past and current situation. I want them all. Alright, let me see. Flipping through the page, Small Snake's eyes paused on the names of the 3 individuals I had highlighted. His previous frown deepened. Just what? Though his reaction was understandable, there was a reason why I prioritized them. It wasn't because they were the best, no. It was because they were the easiest to recruit considering what kind of circumstances I was in. Especially since recruiting people into a newly established guild was extremely hard. Don't get me wrong though. Just because they were easier to recruit wasn't the only reason I highlighted their name. They were all extremely talented individuals that would no doubt add value to the members of the guild. Who? Opening a copy of the files, I looked at the first highlighted profile. Name, Ava Leafs. Age, 16. Picture, image. Job, student, Lock 976. Potential, unranked. Ava in the novel was a monster tamer. She does make a few appearances in the novel, but in the end, her roles always tended to be small. She'd just appear on 1 chapter and then just disappear for 20 more to once again appear for 1 chapter and disappear for another 20. A true extra. I remember that in the last volume of the novel, during the 3rd cataclysm, she was supposed to make another appearance. I had planned for her to appear when the alliance between the 4 races was about to suffer major losses. She with an army of beasts would join the alliance and give them some breathing space and increase their momentum in the fight against demons. She was finally going to show the world how strong her profession was. With an army of beasts, she would decimate and destroy multiple demons at once. Unfortunately, that never happened. Just when I was about to get to that part, I died. One good thing about her was that because she wasn't heavily involved with the plotline, my interfering with her wouldn't cause any trouble to anyone. Plus, with my knowledge as the author, I actually knew about the location of an item she was supposed to get at the end of the novel. It was sort of a cheat item. It essentially allowed for her to control multiple beasts at a time. Since it was meant to be for hers, me getting it and giving it to her wouldn't affect the future events of the story. She'll just be stronger faster than originally meant. Which was ideal. Thinking thus far, I glanced at the next person on the list. Name, Leopold Ray. Age, 32. Picture, image. Job, mercenary at Moonlight Corps. Potential, A, current, D. An experienced mercenary who appears in the 3rd volume of the book. Although he wasn't necessarily outstanding in combat, he was a very competent leader and commander. The reason why I chose him was because we needed someone with experience to help us. Being new, I knew nothing about how to run a mercenary corps. With him aiding me, developing this organization wasn't a problem. But that wasn't the only reason why I chose him. He had another talent. He was an extremely strong commander. During one of the arcs of the novel, Leopold would take charge of a few troops to fight against villains, and thanks to his heroic deeds he was able to survive and complete the mission flawlessly. He meets Kevin on multiple occasions in the novel, and although Kevin had a good impression of him, he never managed to really enter Kevin's party, which in all honesty would have benefited a lot if they had someone as experienced as him helping them. Sighing, I looked at the last name on the list. Name, Ryan Palev. Age, 12. Picture, image. Job, none. Potential, S, current, unranked. A child prodigy. A child born with a supercomputer of a brain. He could calculate the probability of different factors in a matter of seconds. Whatever scenario was presented before him, he would be able to calculate everything in a matter of seconds, detailing the best route and action to take. He appeared in the 4th volume of the novel, and by the time Kevin found him, he was already dead. He was part of a medium-sized guild that exploited his abilities. They would continuously make him stay at night and work him to the bones. A 12-year-old child. Sadly, he was later killed by his own guild master due to Kevin foiling the plans he had come up with on multiple occasions. In the end, Kevin caught the guild master and killed him on the spot. Must have them. Those were the 3 main people I had set my mind on recruiting. Glancing at Smallsonk, who was busy looking at the files I gave him, I smiled. Though he may be doubting me now, as soon as he will see them, he will realize their true potential. I was sure. The Author's POV. Chapter 85, Past, Present, and Future, 1. 7 a.m. Staring at the clock stuck on the wall of my house, I headed to the kitchen and made myself some coffee. The lights of the villa were shut and I was the only person in the house. My parents already went to the guild and Nola was at daycare. So I had the whole place to myself. Sliding the door that led to the garden, I felt the morning breeze cool down my body instantly. For the past few days, I had been fairly busy. After spending a lot of time remodeling the warehouse as well as studying for my exams, I barely had any time to focus on my training. The only time I had available was usually early in the morning. Phoo. Taking a deep breath, I sat cross-legged in the garden. It was about time I broke through my rank. Taking out multiple potions from my dimensional space, I opened the thumb-sized bottle cap and gulped one of the potions down. Gulp. At first, the potion was tasteless. But soon after, a bitter aftertaste invaded the tonsils of my tongue. The aftertaste was similar to that of a shot of espresso. Very bitter. Pant. Exhaling and taking a long deep breath, I focused my mind on spreading the effects of the potion throughout my body. Instantly, the cells within my body jumped in excitement. Streams of energy circulated around my body as white steam slowly escaped from my body, creating a white mist around me. Gulp. Without skipping a beat, after I felt the effects of the first potion wearing out, I instantly downed another one. Like that, I repeated the process 3 more times until I suddenly felt my body bloat and the muscles of my body twitch. Pant. Pant. Panting heavily, I cleared my mind. Soon after, the twitching stopped and a wave of energy washed over my body, revitalizing all of my muscles. My head became lucid, as well as my senses. Suddenly, everything around me became clearer. The water droplet dripping from the blade of grass in the distance became more perceptible. The sound of the birds chirping became more apparent, and the smells around me intensified. It felt as if everything around me was within my grasp. Phoo. Exhaling, and adjusting myself to the changes around me, I looked at my status window. Status . Name, Rendover. Rank, F+. Strength, F+. Agility, F+. Stamina, F. Intelligence, F. Mana capacity, F+. Luck, E. Charm, G. Profession. Swordsmanship LVL.2. The degree of understanding of the sword has evolved to the next level. User will find it easier to understand concepts that were previously harder to understand. Martial Manual. Keiki Style, Minor Realm of Mastery. Sword art created by Grandmaster Toshimoto Keiki. A 5-star module that focused primarily on reaching the apex of swordsmanship and speed. Upon mastery, the sword art becomes so fast that before an opponent could even think about their next move, their heads would already be rolling on the ground. Ring of Vindication, minor realm of mastery. Highly advanced sword art that creates a perfect ring of defense around the user. Upon mastery, the ring can create a 3-dimensional sphere that protects the user from all sides. Because of the lack of offensive capabilities, the manual was graded 3 stars. Drifting steps. Movement art that progresses with each step. With every step taken, user speed will increase. Unless user stops, speed will continuously increase until the user either runs out of mana or due to injury. Skills. G. Monarch's Indifference. A skill that enables users to erase all emotions, and act as a supreme monarch that only calculates the best option regardless of circumstance. I did it. I broke through to the next rank. I was now a small rank away from reaching E rank. Judging from the way I was progressing, if nothing strange happened, in either a month or 2 I could finally break through again. Because I had consumed the seed of limit, my training speed was even faster than the likes of Kevin. Still, he had a system, so it's not like it really made a difference for him. Standing up, I stretched my body. I could instantly feel the fibers of my muscles being more durable and flexible. Almost as if the power within them had doubled. Gotcha. Punching the air, a small shockwave swept the garden. The grass around the area I punched split apart and a gush of air swept the surroundings. Not bad. Nodding in satisfaction, and staring at my fist for a few seconds, I decided to head back into the house. It was about time I practiced the new movement art my dad gave me. The garden was too small for me, therefore, I decided to go to the park. Putting on my shoes, I quickly left the house. Clank. Swoosh. Like a lightning bolt, my figure sped around the park at incredible speeds. Like a shadow, my silhouette ran around the park. As I ran, the world around me became slower and slower, almost as if time had slowed down. However, that didn't last long as I soon ran out of mana. Huff, huff, huff. Stopping and resting my hands on my knees, I felt the morning air rush past me. I was tired. With every step I took, my speed increased. It was almost like I was endlessly accelerating. Drifting steps. That was the name of the movement art I was practicing. With each step I took, my speed increased. At first, I was running at a regular pace, but as time passed and the longer I ran, the faster I became. It got to the point where I was running so fast that I almost crashed against a couple of trees along the way. This was mainly due to the fact that I couldn't control my body properly as I ran, thus exposing me to danger. Had this not been an open space, I would have definitely gotten injured. Gulp. Downing a stamina recovery potion, followed by a mana recovery potion, I prepared to once again do a lap of the park. However, just as I was about to continue practicing, a warm, pleasant voice called out for me. Ren, it's been such a long time. Frowning, I looked towards where the voice came from. With his arms crossed and leaning against a tree, a youth wearing a grayish-black suit entered my sight. He appeared to be in his late teens or so. His face was fairly handsome and outstanding. The black suit, which was devoid of any wrinkles, coupled with his demeanor of his, gave off a somewhat dashing aura. His voice was warm, and the way he smiled caused the people around him to have a good feeling around him. Who was he? I don't remember ever knowing this person. Was he another one of the old Ren's acquaintances? Just as I was about to ask him who he was, my mouth abruptly opened. Hello, Matthew. Huh. Lightly smiling, the youth moved away from the tree and headed in my direction. Laughing, he said. Ha ha ha, you haven't changed since I last saw you. Shy as always. Bah, thump, bah, thump, bah, thump. My heart suddenly sped. Cold sweat appeared on my back, and my body trembled. What was this feeling? Was this fear? Why was I experiencing fear over someone I never met before? What's wrong? The closer he got, the more these feelings intensified. Lowering my head, my mouth once again opened and in a trembling voice. Haha, it's nothing, Emetho. What's going on? Who's Matthew? And why couldn't I speak? Millions of questions emerged in my mind as I tried my best to take control of my body. However, it was to no avail. Like a spectator, I could only watch everything unfold before my eyes. I felt powerless. Like a bird trapped inside of a cage with no gap to escape. What is happening to me? Halt. Stopping right in front of Ren, Matthew took a good look at him. Noticing his shoulders trembling, the smile on Matthew's face deepened. I see, I'm glad to see you again, Ren. Me too. In a light tone, almost as if he was addressing something insignificant, Matthew spoke. I've heard you defeated Alex, congrats. I didn't know you had that in you, my friend. You know. When I heard of the news of you defeating Alex, I was quite surprised. I mean, back in middle school no one would have expected for you to even go beyond G rank, let alone reach F rank. You wouldn't believe how surprised I was when I was told you had reached the F rank. Mind blown. As Ren listened to Matthew speaking, his body would shake from time to time. Though he tried to not show any emotions on his face, on rare occasions his face would crumble as emotions such as sadness, rage, helplessness, and despair would appear on it. I am so glad you reached this far after having not seen each other for months. As Matthew finished speaking, scratching his head, Ren meekly said. Haha, I just got lucky. Lucky huh, I guess so. Nodding his head a couple of times, Matthew paused. Staring straight into Ren's eyes, his demeanor completely changed. If before he was like a friendly elder brother, right now he looked like a vicious predator looking at his prey. Ren, as your best friend, I came to give you a piece of advice, don't do anything unnecessary. Patting him on the shoulder, leaning towards his ear, Matthew whispered, we wouldn't want a similar incident to last time happening now, would we? Nodding his head, Ren's voice shook as he answered. Why yes. Hearing Ren's confirmation, Matthew laughed out loud. Ahaha, that's great, that's great. I'm glad that we're on the same page. I was worried that you might do something Stu dash. Ring. Ring. Stopping mid-sentence, the loud ringing coming from his pocket echoed across the surroundings. Frowning, taking out his phone from his pocket and looking at the caller ID, Matthew answered it. Hello, alright, I understand, I'll be there soon. Tack. After a short call, hanging up the phone, sighing, Matthew once again looked at Ren. Fixing his collar, he waved at him and turned around. Seems like I need to go, I guess that's it for our little reunion. Though short, I was extremely happy to have caught up with you. I'll see you next time. Waving towards Matthew, Ren smiled back. Yes, see you soon. Waving his hand till Matthew disappeared, Ren's face soon became indifferent. Arriving at a nearby bench, he sat down. Phoo. Taking a deep breath, his vision turned dark and he passed out. Thud. The Author's POV. Chapter 86, Past, Present, and Future, 2. Abruptly opening my eyes, I sat up straight. I can control my body again. Touching my face and body, I couldn't help but be elated. I could now feel my hands, face, and every other part of my body. The senses that I had previously lost had returned to me. I no longer felt like a trapped beast. I could finally move. Who? Just as I was rejoicing at the fact that I could now control my body, I suddenly noticed my surroundings. What's going on? Wasn't I at the park moments before? Looking around me, I found myself outside of what seemed to be a kindergarten. Scanning around, I could see children playing tag in the playground of the kindergarten, followed by their parents coming in and out of the premises to pick them up. Confused, I stood up. I tried to walk around, but 3 steps in, an invisible wall stopped me from moving any further. What? Taken aback by the invisible wall, I frowned. Placing my hand on the invisible wall, I exerted a little bit of strength, but it was to no avail as it didn't budge. Frowning even harder, I placed both hands on the wall and pushed as hard as I could. Still, in the end, no matter how much strength I put in, the wall didn't budge. Turning around, realizing that I could not move the wall, I tried to go in the opposite direction, but it was also to no avail as 3 steps in, another wall blocked me. Taken aback, I tried to move in all directions, but it was futile. Every 3 steps I took, an invisible wall would stop me from moving. No matter how hard I tried to push the walls, they wouldn't budge. I was trapped inside of an invisible cube. What's happening? Where was I? And what is this place? Millions of questions emerged in my mind, as I kept trying to find a way out of the cube. In the end, after 10 minutes of constantly trying, Helpless, I could only sit down and stare at the children in the kindergarten playground. Maybe the key to getting free was outside of the cube. As I observed the kindergarten, I couldn't help but focus my attention on a certain area. More specifically, a certain young boy who looked to be around 5 years old. Disheveled, unkempt brown hair and dull eyes. As he swung on the swing of the garden of the kindergarten, the young boy kept staring in the distance, seemingly waiting for someone to pick him up. No matter how long he had to wait. He waited. Yet, despite 30 more minutes passing and most of the children leaving, no one picked him up. As I watched the young boy in the distance, my heart hurt as I couldn't help but wonder. Who is he? That's Matthew. Abruptly turning my head, a youth with blue eyes and jet black hair appeared beside me. Staring in the distance, towards the young boy, a complicated expression appeared on his face. Why you? Smiling in my direction, he introduced himself. Nice to meet you. I'm Ren. Ah, eh. My mind blanked. I tried to find words to say, but it was to no avail as I couldn't say anything. What was the old Ren doing here? Wasn't he supposed to be dead? Was he not dead? My mind was in a current state of turmoil as I couldn't find any words to say. Did he even know who I was? Smiling at my reaction, Ren shook his head. There's no need for you to introduce yourself. I've been with you for the past 3 months, watching your every move. What? Shrugging his shoulders, Ren shook his head. Don't ask me, I don't know what happened either. I just suddenly found my consciousness watching everything that you were doing whilst I couldn't control my body. Wait, so you were within me watching everything I did since taking over your body? Smiling, Ren nodded. Yeah. My eyes opened wide. To think that someone was watching everything I was doing whilst I reincarnated here. But ho dash. SHHHH. Just as I was about to speak, putting his finger on his mouth, he motioned me to be quiet as he pointed towards the kid I was previously watching. Let's not talk about that now, it's about time you learned about my past. Matthew, are you okay? As soon as the previous Ren stopped talking, out of nowhere, a young boy with jet black hair and blue eyes approached Matthew. Yeah. Smiling brightly and nodding his little head, Matthew kept his eyes towards the entrance of the kindergarten. Tapping Matthew on the shoulder, the black-haired boy excitedly said. Let's play, Matthew. But my parents will come soon. Yeah, then just play until they come. But, they will get mad if they don't see me immediately. Looking around, pointing at the swings, the black-haired boy said. Then let's just play here on the swings. Watching the 2 children play on the swings, I couldn't help but turn my head towards Ren's direction and ask. Is that you? Staring at the young boy with jet black hair and blue eyes playing with Matthew, Ren lightly nodded. Yeah. Pointing towards the kid that the old Ren was playing with, I furrowed my brows. And is that the same guy I met at the park? Smiling, a trace of sadness appeared in Ren's eyes as he looked at the young Matthew. Yeah, and he was my best friend. Taken aback, I couldn't help but look at Ren in shock. Remembering what had happened moments before appearing in this strange world, Matthew looked more like a bully rather than a best friend. How was someone like that ever been his friend? Best friend. Noticing the skepticism on my face, Ren smiled but didn't elaborate. Yeah. Vroom. At that moment, as I was still in shock by the revelation, a black sedan entered the parking area of the kindergarten. Staring at the incoming sedan, Matthew happily stood up. Soon the back doors opened and a man and a woman got off of the vehicle. Mom. Dad. Pa. Just as Matthew was a few feet away from them, raising his hand, the dad slapped him in the face. I told you not to come running at us like that. You're an elite, you must keep your composure at all times. Holding back his tears, with his hand on his cheek, Matthew smiled weakly and nodded his head. Despite being hit, he seemed rather happy that his parents had shown up. Here. Taking something out of his pocket, Matthew excitedly handed it to his father. It was a drawing he had made in class that depicted a man and a woman holding hands with a child. However, his father grabbed the picture, and crumbled it and tossed it away. Is this what you wasted your entire day doing? What a waste. Turning around, and urging his wife to follow him, they both entered the car. Bye. Seeing his parents enter the car, Matthew secretly picked up the crumpled paper on the floor and entered the car. As he did, turning around, he cheerfully waved at Ren. Bye, Ren. The scene cut and the world turned dark. Swoosh. Extending his hand forward, Ren swiped right and the world around me changed. Soon the world around me changed. The kindergarten turned itself into a classroom filled with students. Just as I was about to ask Ren about what was going on, a familiar voice disrupted me. What happened, Matthew? Running towards Matthew, Ren's figure appeared. As Ren took a better look at Matthew, he couldn't help but gasp. Matthew's face was bruised and his eyes were black. It looked like he had just been through hell. Moreover, Ren soon noticed Matthew's leg limping as he walked inside of the class. From the way it was swollen, it was evident that his leg was broken. He was not in a good state. Raising his hand up, Ren looked towards the teacher responsible for the class and said, "Teacher, Matthew needs to go to the infirmary immediately." Glancing at Matthew's battered figure for a split second, the class teacher disinterestedly shook his head. "He looks fine to me." Opening his eyes wide, Ren's voice couldn't help but raise a few pitches. "How does this look fine to you in any way?" Frowning, the teacher put the book he was holding down and in an aloof voice said, "Student Rendover will be given detention after school for talking back to teacher." What dash? Grabbing Ren's forearm, coughing a couple of times, Matthew shook his head. "Cough, cough, I'm fine. But." Smiling, Matthew weakly sat on his seat. "It's okay, they are too scared to anger my father." Cough. Swoosh. Once again, the scene changed. This time, the classroom remained the same, however, everyone was older. Did you hear? Apparently Matthew's mother died in an accident. His life was already miserable before, but look at him now, it's like he doesn't want to live anymore. Staring at the seat in the corner of the class where Matthew sat, every student in class whispered and pointed in his direction. Matthew, are you okay?" Approaching Matthew, Ren sat next to him. However, despite trying everything to try to get his attention, Matthew's eyes remained hollow the entire time. His lips were dry, his skin was dry and his hair was a mess. It looked like he had thoroughly given up on life. "Matthew." Calling Matthew one last time, Matthew's eyes regained a bit of clarity as he glanced at Ren. "Ah, Ren. Are you okay?" After a short pause, Matthew smiled weakly and said, "Yeah, I'm fine." Ding. Dong. As the bell that signaled for the end of the school rang, Matthew took his bag and directly left the class. Following Matthew, Ren tried to make sure he wouldn't bump into anyone. He was extremely worried as from the way he was walking, he looked like a zombie. As they reached the entrance of the school, staring at Ren, Matthew waved goodbye to him and entered a black sedan. As he waved goodbye to Ren, a small tear dropped down from his right cheek. Because it was so subtle, only if one paid close attention would they notice. Bye, Ren. Inside of the invisible cube, watching Matthew entering the car, Ren's face beside me couldn't help but twist as he softly mumbled. "I wished I had stopped him that day. Ever since that day, the Matthew I knew died." The author's POV. Chapter 87, Past, Present, and Future, 3. Swoosh. Extending his hand forward and swiping right, the scene before me changed once again. This time, instead of a classroom, it was right outside Ren's house. Standing outside of Ren's house, Ren and Matthew stood before each other. Compared to before, Matthew's demeanor was completely different. If before he was gloomy and lonely, he now looked like an outstanding and refined young man. His very presence screamed elegance. His warm eyes and voice would instantly cause everyone who met him to have a good impression of him. A stark contrast to before. Smiling, Matthew took out 2 transparent potions from his pocket and showed them to Ren. "Hey Ren, my dad was extremely happy with my results recently and he gave me 2 advanced potions." "What? How did you even get a hold of such expensive potions?" Opening his eyes wide, Ren couldn't help but look at the 2 potions with a hint of envy. It had to be noted that a single advanced potion could go for tens of millions of U. That's how expensive they were. Moreover, compared to intermediate ones, they were much more efficient. No wonder Ren was surprised. Scratching the back of his head and chuckling, Matthew said, "Well, I really did please my father this time. After he gave them to me, he said that it was a good investment into my future. Damn, I'm getting jealous here. I haven't even tried an intermediate potion, let alone an advanced 1-inch." Nodding his head multiple times, extending his hands, Matthew put both potions in Ren's hand. Yup, I know, that's why I'm giving them to you, more precisely give them to your parents. Stupefied, Ren's hands shook as he held onto those potions. With his eyes wide open, Ren's voice couldn't help but tremble. What are you doing? I'm giving them to you. Dude, do you know how expensive these things are? What about you? Seeing Ren's state, Matthew couldn't help but laugh out loud. Ha ha ha, no worries. I already had one, it's the least I can do to repay your parents for having taken care of me over the years. If I had to be honest, they're like my second parents. Crack. Bullshit. Turning my head, I saw Ren beside me clenching his fist hard as his hands cracked. His face became incomparably dark as he stared at Matthew with pure hatred. Biting his lips, he coldly spat. If you truly cared about them like they were your second parents, you wouldn't have, damn it. Confused, I wanted to ask what he meant by that, but I decided to just watch the scene before me unfold. I was bound to find the answer sooner or later. Staring at the two potions in his hands, Ren hesitated before looking back at Matthew and once again asking in a trembling voice. Hey, are you sure? Yeah, just take it. Staring at Matthew, and noticing his earnest expression, Ren shook his head and sighed. Alright, if you're so adamant about me taking them, refusing you will just be rude on my end. Ha ha ha, you've made the right choice. Thank your parents when you give them the potions. If it weren't for them, I wouldn't be the man I am today. Shaking his head, Ren smiled. Sure, I will. Waving his hand, with a big smile on his face, Matthew turned around and left the compound. As Matthew turned around, the smile on his face slowly faded. I'm sorry, best friend. Swoosh. Without looking at me, swiping right, once again, the scenery around me changed. Glancing at Ren, who was beside me, though he returned to his usual indifferent self, I could visibly see his body shaking with every passing scene. Almost as if he was trying his best to not give in to his emotions. Why oh you ho w could you? Kneeling on the ground, outside of what seemed to be a rooftop, Ren's figure appeared kneeling on the ground as he glared upwards. His eyes contained an unimaginable amount of hatred. How could I? Cuckoo, I don't know. I guess I was just bored. Staring at Ren's kneeling figure, Matthew tried to hold his laughter back, but he soon burst out laughing. Coo, I'm sorry Ren, I really had no choice, coo, ha 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 ha. Opening his eyes wide, Ren stared at Matthew, who was laughing maniacally before him. How could you betray me like this? Bam. I can't. Turning his head away and placing his palm on the invisible wall, the memory paused. Clenching his teeth hard, Ren slowly spat. This was the day. Trembling all over, Ren's fist and jaw clenched tightly as he glared in Matthew's direction with pure hatred. This was the day my life was ruined. Voom. Soon a thick red bloodlust started exuding from Ren's body as his eyes became bloodshot. Frowning, and seeing Ren's current state, I grabbed his shoulder and tried to snap him out of it. Calm down, explain to me what happened. Schwa. Feeling his clothes getting tugged, forcefully trying to calm himself down, the bloodlust around Ren disappeared. Glancing in my direction, he said. Do you remember the potions he had given me in my previous memory? Yeah. Nodding my head, I remembered. How could I forget? Even I wanted to try advanced potions once. However, with the price each one went for, I could only admire them from the distance. They were cursed with a mind-breaker curse. Abruptly turning my head, I couldn't help but stare at Ren in shock. What? The mind-breaker curse. The mind-breaker curse, one of the strongest curses a demon could cast. Once cast. No matter how far, with a simple flick of their fingers, whoever was under the curse would die as soon as the demon deemed that they were no longer useful. It was an especially scary curse as it was undetectable. You wouldn't realize you were cursed before it was already too late. A demon. Huh. As my thoughts paused there, opening my eyes widely, I couldn't help but stare at Matthew in shock. Seeing that I understood, glancing back towards Matthew, Ren slowly nodded. Yeah, Matthew had made a contract with a demon. What, Staring at Ren for a couple of seconds, I tried to say something, but in the end, no words came out of my mouth. I don't know what happened, but, ever since that last memory, Matthew changed. He became a completely different person. At first I thought he was trying his best to move on, but... Trembling, Ren covered his mouth. The end. I only realized till it was too late. By the time I realized something strange in his behavior, he had already fallen into the depths of depression and became a villain, completely losing his sense of reasoning. The best friend I knew was gone. Watching Rin struggle to speak, I remained silent. Who knew that he had such a deep backstory? His childhood friend whom he regarded as a brother turned into a villain and in doing so cursed both his parents. KHHHH. Damn it. Glaring at Matthew's image in the distance, veins popped from Ren's forehead, as his eyes turned bloodshot. From that day, I was forced to do everything he asked me to do, be it sneak inside of my parents' room to give him secret information regarding the guild operations or any other sensitive information that costed the guild quite dearly. I did his bidding for him at the expense of my parents' guild. Turning around, and looking at me in the eyes, he shouted. Because I trusted him so much, I was the reason why my parents' guild fell that hard. The 95 million you debt. All because of me leaking the secret deals that the guild was responsible for. All the friends I had made as soon as they noticed that my parents' guild was going downhill abandoned me. I soon became the school outcast. I was alone. I couldn't even glance at my parents in the eyes due to the immense guilt I felt every day. Every day was like hell to me. Pausing, Ren smiled. But it wasn't a smile of happiness. No. It was a smile full of sadness and sorrow. I did have some hope though. I somehow managed to get accepted into the lock. Suddenly, amidst the darkness, I saw a ray of hope. But that hope too was soon destroyed. D rank. That's they dead my talent to be. Although my parents didn't show it, I knew they were distraught with the news as they had just borrowed 30 million U from the guild with the excuse of making an investment towards my future. Glancing at the ground, Ren's eyes became hollow. His figure looked lonely and tragic. And you know what? Despite knowing I wasn't talented, they still loved me just as much as before. Moreover, they still decided to pay for the admission fee for the lock. That destroyed me, especially after what I had done. Placing his hand over where his heart was, Ren clenched it. With each passing second I lived, it felt like pieces of my heart were being torn. Pita. Pita. Grabbing onto my clothes, Ren stared at me as tears streamed down his cheeks. Ache my body, I don't care. Heck, I don't care if I cease to exist after this, but please save them, please. I beg you. I can't. Foo. Exhaling, I closed my eyes. Feeling Ren tugging my collar as he desperately looked at me with hope in his eyes, I expected such a request. From the moment he spoke about his past, I knew this moment was about to come. However, I didn't expect his story to be this tragic. The Mindbreaker Curse. One of the most notorious curses in the human domain. The one curse that has no cure, and the very same curse his parents have. Once someone was under the effect of Mindbreaker, their lives were no longer under their control. Only upon death would they be able to free themselves from the curse. Or at least that was until the latter half of the novel where Kevin manages to find the cure to the curse. I knew where to find the cure, but in the process, I would be completely destroying the plotline that I worked so hard to protect. A part of me wanted to just remain indifferent. However, memories of these past few days started flooding my mind like a broken dam. Specifically the warmth I felt these past few days. Although they weren't my real parents, I couldn't forget the care that they had given me the past few days. Maybe my emotions were still under the influence of the old Ren, but as the warm faces of my new family replayed in my mind, opening my eyes, I looked at Ren and smiled. Alright. The Author's POV. Chapter 88, When Everything Falls into Place, 1. The crescent moon high in the sky was gradually covered by dark, drifting clouds. Inside of a large park, the night lamps lit the surroundings, disconnecting the darkness that had spread throughout the environment. Who? Sitting on a bench, the faint rhythmical breathing of a youth disrupted the tranquil and silent surroundings. Ah. Waking up, I found myself sitting on a bench in the middle of the park. Squinting my eyes to familiarize myself with the lighting coming from the lamps, I rubbed my forehead. Instantly, I recalled everything that had happened inside of my consciousness. Foo. As I did, I took a deep breath. To think Ren's story was so tragic. To have his own best friend turn into a villain and in the process have him curse his very own parents as well as blackmailing him into doing his bidding. Tragic was the perfect word to describe what he went through. Remembering Ren's lonely figure as he went through his memories inside of my consciousness, I recalled focusing my attention towards his eyes. those eyes filled with sorrow and loneliness as he shared his memories with me. Thinking back, all of this wouldn't have happened if Matthew didn't sign a pact with a demon and became a villain. As soon as he made a pact with a demon in exchange for power, Matthew lost control of his emotions, and by letting his emotions overtake his sanity, Matthew must have discarded all his previous feelings for Ren and the people he was close with for the sake of that power. In doing so, he chose to destroy Ren's life. The one person that never abandoned him. Ring. Ring. As I was staring at the moon in deep thought, my phone rang. Looking at the phone log, I instantly noticed a large notification appearing before me. Mom has called 5 times. Seeing the notification, I instantly picked up the phone. Ren. Where have you been? As I answered the call, a loud voice escaped from the speakers of the phone. Without skipping a beat, I moved the phone away from my ear. As I had seen the caller ID, I already knew this was going to happen. After making sure my mother calmed down, putting the phone back on my ear, I responded. I'm actually at the park at the moment. At the park? Well, I was training and I somehow lost track of time. In the end, that's the excuse I came up with. Since I was caught off guard by the call, that was the most plausible excuse I could use to avoid arousing any suspicion from her. Fortunately, she didn't press any further and sighed. Sigh, what am I going to do with you? All right, hurry up and come back home or else there won't be dinner for you. All right, be there soon. Be quick. Understood. Tack. Hanging up the phone, I put it in my pocket and stood up. It was time to head back home. The walk home wasn't long, about 5 minutes. It was short and relaxing. Especially with the autumn wind lightly blowing against my clothes, refreshing my mind. Midway through my journey home, I couldn't help but look back at my decision. Was I really going to interfere with the plotline for the sake of a few individuals whom I just met for a few days? Yeah, Ren's emotions that dwelled inside of me had somewhat affected my decision-making process. Maybe I was impulsive when answering Ren, but a part of me feels that that wasn't the only reason that prompted me to make a move. There was something else, but I just quite couldn't place my finger on it. Only with due time will I be able to determine what I was feeling. If it were the old me, I would have refused Ren's request without hesitation, and this mainly had to do with my personality. There was a reason why I always wanted to keep the plotline intact. Control. That's what mattered to me. I was fine with the plotline changing as long as the major events didn't change, at least to the point where I still had a general idea of what was to come in the future. I guess it mostly had to do with my personality, but I just wanted everything to be under my control. I didn't like when things didn't go as I dictated. I disliked being put into situations where I wasn't in control of the flow. Especially if my meddling would result in the Demon King appearing way earlier than he should have. If that happened, then all the preparation I had made in order to fight him would become useless. Maybe if I was strong like Kevin I wouldn't have cared, but I wasn't. For someone like me, every little detail mattered. If I suddenly took a cheat item and my action resulted in Kevin's death in the process, what was I supposed to do? Replace him? No. That was not something I was willing to do. I wasn't someone who wanted to bear the responsibility of saving the world. That responsibility weighed heavier than anyone could possibly imagine. I was no hero, nor did I wish to become one. I didn't have a grand goal or anything like that per se. As long as the universe didn't get destroyed by the hands of the Demon King, I was content. That's why I was so obsessed with keeping the plotline fixed. So that I could fight the Demon King with the most optimal preparations. Sighing, I could only lament the fact that that was no longer possible. Especially since I needed to find the cure for the Mindbreaker curse, an extremely terrifying curse that dictated someone's life and death. In the future, towards the ending of the second volume, Kevin and his friend would be put in a position where they would have to find the cure for the curse at all cost. In the process of finding the cure, they will go through many trials that will shape their character as well as improve their strength. Many schemes made by the demons would end up being destroyed in the process. Though it wasn't the most important arc, it was still very important for their character development. If I chose to go find the cure for the curse, my actions would definitely cause a butterfly effect, but I just wasn't sure how big. Fortunately, time was on my side. Because my parents' guild was already on the verge of collapse, Matthew had no use for me. The only reason he used to blackmail the Oldren was so that he could weaken my parents' guild. Although the Oldren didn't tell me, I could pretty much guess the motives behind Matthew's blackmailing. He wanted to absorb Galxicus. With the fact that his father owned a gold-graded guild, wanting to absorb smaller silver-graded guilds wasn't strange. In fact, it was quite common. However, the process usually took a very long time, hence why they try to use all sorts of dirty tricks in the book to try to force them to sell the guild to them. Knowing this fact, I knew that I wasn't pressed for time. Before he would completely kill my parents, due to them no longer having any use, he would first need to completely absorb Galxicus. Which by my estimation would take approximately 1 year. And this was ideal since I needed to make a lot of preparations. Finding the cure for the curse wasn't going to be easy, no. I would say it would probably be one of the most dangerous trips I would ever make. However, it wouldn't be all for nothing. In fact, the trip wouldn't just consist of me finding a cure. Perhaps this was the other reason why I chose to accept Ren's request, but there was an item I was extremely interested in. More specifically, one that was tailor-made for one of the future members of my mercenary group. Named after Artemis, the goddess of animals, the ultimate beast tamer cheat item. The Flute of Artemis. An item that allowed beast tamers to control multiple beasts at a time. The item that helped Ava's monster tamer class shine in the original novel, prompting her into becoming one of the strongest humans in the novel. Well, although I said all of that, there was just one teeny tiny problem. The place I wanted to go get the cure wasn't actually on Earth. The Author's POV. Chapter 89, When Everything Falls into Place, 2. Kaisa, Headquarters. Here are all the files of the people you requested for me to find. Alright, thanks. Without glancing at Small Snake on my left, I took the files from his hand and threw them on the desk I was currently working on. A week had passed since I learned about Ren's past, and nothing changed. The renovations for the warehouse were pretty much done. With my limited budget, I could only redecorate the place to make it look more presentable, but there really wasn't any high-tech equipment nor training rooms here yet. I was too poor for that. What are you doing? Seeing me discard the files he had just given me, rolling his eyes, Small Snake couldn't help but ask. I'm making preparations. Preparations for? Well, let's just say that in 4 months I'll be going on a long trip with a couple of people. Frowning, Small Snake couldn't help but tilt his head in confusion. If it's in 4 months, why do you need to start making preparations now? You wouldn't believe me even if I told you. I will be going to find a cure for a curse that has been universally acknowledged as something that didn't have a cure. Was what I wanted to say, but he wouldn't believe me even if I told him so. Moreover, I also didn't tell him that I was not going to be on Earth throughout that whole trip. So may as well just dodge the question. Speechless, Small Snake could only pinch the middle of his brows as he continued. Anyhow, I did look at the profiles of the people you had previously recommended to join our mercenary group, and I still don't understand why you want them. Taking the file that I threw on the desk, Small Snake opened it and took out 3 profiles. I sort of understand why you want to recruit Ryan Polive, but why a monster tamer and an old mercenary? Pointing towards Eva's and Leopold's files, Small Snake frowned. Isn't the monster tamer class useless since they can only control one beast? Moreover, from what I've been told, the beast they tame can't even increase in strength. Without glancing at Small Snake, I continued scribbling on a piece of paper. What he said wasn't wrong. Monster tamers weren't very sought after due to their limitations with regards to how many beasts they could tame. Normally 1, on rare occasions 2. Moreover, the beasts that they could tame couldn't become stronger. Their strength was fixed. Meaning that if you tamed a less than G-ranked beast, that was it. No matter how much food you fed to it or how much time you spent training it, the beast was forever going to stay at G rank. Unless you got a new one, you couldn't raise its rank. And that's where the real problem laid. The expenses needed to sustain a monster tamer were astronomical. The costs of capturing and feeding a less than S-ranked beast probably amounted to the same costs needed to raise multiple S-ranked heroes. It just wasn't worth it. Don't even get me started about the mercenary. Seeing that I was still scribbling stuff, Small Snake continued. From what I've found in the files, he seems to be a regular member with seemingly no outdash. Stop. Sigh. Putting my pen down, I leaned on my chair and looked at Small Snake, and sighed. Small Snake, just trust me. I know what I'm doing. Flick. Flicking the pen that was rolling down on my paper, I continued. You think I would just choose random people without having put much thought into it? Shaking his head, Small Snake responded. No. Then what's the point of asking? Just wait and I will prove to you that my judgment wasn't wrong. Frowning for a second, Small Snake eventually nodded his head. All right. Seeing Small Snake nod, a faint smile appeared on my lips. Although Small Snake was a very capable person, he tended to question my every decision. Well, he wasn't wrong in doing so. I mean, apart from the CB Pharmaceuticals incident, he hasn't really seen the full extent of my abilities. Nor did he know I was the author of this novel. It wasn't wrong of him to doubt me. Especially since he didn't know what I had in store for the members I was planning on recruiting. In the end, with due time, Small Snake will eventually understand what I was doing. Any other problems? Yes, actually. Smiling, my brows twitched. You weren't supposed to answer that. Shaking his head and ignoring my rumbling, Small Snake continued. According to the information inside of the files, Ryan Polive, the 12-year-old kid that you were keen on recruiting, is currently being scouted by a gold-graded guild. Gold-graded? Yeah. Resting my face on my hand, I softly mumbled. This is indeed a problem. A gold-graded guild. I knew that Ryan was currently being scouted by a gold-graded guild, but that still didn't change the fact that this was a problem. Guilds were divided into 5 different ranks: bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and diamond. In order for a guild to be classified in the gold ranks, it meant that they had to at least have someone who was B ranked in their guild. For platinum, they had to have at least one A ranked hero, and for diamond S. B ranked. So far the strongest opponent I faced was around D rank, and that was already with me exploiting openings that others had made for me. Fighting against AB rank with my current strength was suicidal. As my thoughts paused this far, a smile appeared on my face. But who said anything about me fighting against them openly? Turning my attention back to Small Snake, I ordered. Small Snake, send me all of the information regarding the gold-graded guild that wants to recruit my future member. From their enemies, details regarding their guild master, the top executives as well as their families, make sure you miss nothing. I want to know their habits, their friends, their enemies, everything. What? Frowning, Small Snake couldn't but be even more confused. Just what would he need all that information for? Was he planning on blackmailing them? There's no way he thought the top executives of a gold-graded guild would think people wouldn't target their families. The more Rin spoke, the more Small Snake became confused. Smiling at Small Snake's confused face, I interlocked my fingers and rested my chin on them. Glancing at him, I asked. Small Snake, what do you do when you find yourself against an opponent who is way stronger than you? You run. Shaking my head, I couldn't help but look at Small Snake in disapproval. Small Snake, grow some balls. What are you? Raising my hand, I stopped him from speaking. Small Snake, you don't have to be the strongest person in the world in order to beat a strong opponent, no. Raising my finger, I pointed towards my head. Regardless of how strong someone is, if they can't outsmart you, they can never win. Unless they had power that was overwhelming to the point no trickery nor scheme could win, there was always a solution, you just need to find that solution. Vroom. Tapping on my watch, a huge chessboard appeared on top of my desk. Yawning, I stretched my back and started a game. As I did, I started speaking. Unless you're a god, no being is perfect. Tack. Moving my pawn forward to start the game, I glanced at Small Snake. Everyone has a weakness, regardless of how much they try to hide it, be it big or small, hidden or not hidden, they all have a weakness. Take Achilles for example. Despite the fact that he was invulnerable to anything, as soon as an arrow pierced his weakness, the heel, he like everyone else on the battlefield died. Tack. 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 As I talked, in real time, the pieces on the chessboard automatically moved, matching my tempo. Regardless of how strong your opponent was, once you found their weakness you could exploit it to your advantage. Tack. As I talked, focusing my mind on the game, I looked at the ever-changing pieces and made the appropriate moves. The more time passed, the lower the number of pieces on the board remained. Staring at the game before him, Small Snake looked at my calm face and couldn't help but ask. But what if you don't know what their weakness is? Looking at Small Snake, I smirked. Can't find it. Then, just make one. Moving the rook all the way down the now empty board, it soon appeared below another rook, blocking the defenseless king. Be it through the use of deception, schemes, money, connections, information, if used well, an opening will definitely appear, and then. Tack. Checkmate. Game over, You won. As Small Snake listened, watching the game unfold before his eyes, although he agreed somewhat, he couldn't help but frown. Are you saying that you alone can go against a gold-graded guild? Smiling mysteriously, I didn't answer. In 2 days you'll know. After a bit of silence, Small Snake nodded his head. All right, I'm very curious of what you'll do. Small Snake was indeed curious. The reason why he joined the mercenary group was mainly out of his own curiosity. If he thought about it, apart from the pharmaceuticals incident, he never really saw Ren doing anything grand. Sure, the fact that he knew his circumstances regarding the monolith has also shocked him, but that didn't mean he fully trusted Ren's abilities. He talked a lot, but he never really proved to him that his decision was worthy of his trust. Perhaps this could be a great opportunity to be able to determine if his decision in joining him was the right decision. Thinking thus far, Small Snake sighed and switched the topic. Anyhow, regarding the mercenary Leopold Ray, I think we should be able to recruit him if we just pay him enough money. He is a mercenary after all, but there's just one problem. Frowning, my mouth twitched. How come there was a problem for everything? Why couldn't something just go smoothly for once? Sighing and massaging my forehead, I asked. What is it? Pausing, and looking at me in the eyes, Small Snake hesitated for a moment before saying. We don't have any money. Silence swept the warehouse. Kiam, don't worry about it. I'll solve it by the end of the week. Disrupting the silence, coughing to hide my embarrassment, I leaned on my chair. Money. Fucking money. Whenever I wanted to do something, money was always the first thing that troubled me. With the cost for my training, warehouse renovations, taxes, and other useless expenses I was now poor. There was just never enough money. I did have a couple of short-term solutions that would allow me to make a lot of money, but in the end, if I wanted to sustain a whole mercenary group, I needed to think more broadly. I need to create a steady source of income. And fortunately for me, a plan had already started formulating in my head. The Author's POV. Chapter 90, When Everything Falls into Place, 3. A steady source of income. That's what I needed. Although stocks could help me make a lot of money, in the end, it wasn't really a long-term solution. That mainly had to do with the fact that the time frame for each event differed greatly. There wasn't really going to be another incident similar to that of CB Pharmaceuticals where I could make quick cash in a span of a few days. At least not anytime soon. Moreover, with the fact that the plotline was slowly changing, I wasn't even sure whether the events will continue to go as the story dictated. It was no longer the most optimal option that I could take to make money. In the end, after a lot of thinking, I came up with a solution. Creating my own company. With me being the creator of this world, I obviously knew a lot of things. Especially with regards to the world. From stocks, fashion trends, and products that will sweep the market in the future. I knew everything. With that being the case, a plan had already started formulating in my head. I was going to create a business empire that on paper wasn't affiliated to my mercenary organization, but in reality, was secretly funding our every endeavor. With this, as both my mercenary organization and my business grew, the stronger my influence inside of Ashton City would become. I had realized that just focusing on keeping the plotline intact was useless. No one knew what would happen in the future. Especially since I tended to do things that in a way changed the plotline. It was too passive of an approach. I shouldn't just rely on the security that the plotline gave me in order to fight the Demon King. I needed to have reassurances. I needed something to support me. I needed to secretly grow an empire that would rival the likes of the Union. One that was there yet not there. A secret organization that ruled the shadows. And when everything was set in place, everything would be within my grasp. Rather than be a chess piece, be the one that moves the chess piece. By the time the Demon King descended, I would have made enough preparations to fight back. Yes. That's what I had to do. However, although this sounded nice and all, I needed to approach this carefully. One step at a time. Like they all say. Rome wasn't built in a day. My first goal right now was to establish a functioning business. I already had several products in mind that I could introduce in the market, however, that wasn't my first priority. My first priority was finding a sponsor. Honestly, with me having read a lot of novels in my time, I instantly knew what would happen as soon as the products I introduced hit the market. It would instantly attract the attention of the big shots. They would instantly either try to remove the company from the market or outright threaten them. This was just how the world worked. And honestly, I wasn't too keen on wasting my time dealing with these sorts of problems. That's why a sponsor was necessary. One that was big enough to deter the competitions from finding trouble. And I knew exactly the right person to ask. As the sun brightly lit the surroundings, inside of a busy train station, an air train slowly descended towards one of the platforms of the station. Vroom. Stepping off the air train, I inhaled the fresh autumn air that lingered in the atmosphere. This is the right station, right? Checking my phone, I double-checked with the information Small Snake sent me and made sure I was in the right location. Northern District, Labansa Station. Looking at the station sign, and confirming I was in the right location, I headed out of the station. As I walked out, tapping on my phone, I once again checked Ryan's profile. Name, Ryan Poliv. Age, 12. Job, none. Potential, S, current, unranked. Description, lives with single mother inside of a worn-down one-bedroom apartment. Currently being eyed by gold-graded Guild Luxious. Has been approached multiple times with no success. However, it seems like they currently have had a breakthrough as the mother and son duo have scheduled to make an appointment with them in the next few days at their house. Target blood type is A, height is =============================================================================================================================================================================================================================================================================================================================================================Today, huh? Fortunately, I wasn't late and Ryan had still not been recruited by gold-graded Guild. He was going to be an essential member of my mercenary group. I couldn't afford for him to tragically die like in the story. Bishop. That's the position I had planned on giving him. With him and Small Snake controlling the behind-the-scenes of the mercenary group, I didn't have to worry about our operations failing. Just imaging myself doing missions in the fastest and most efficient way possible sent shivers down my spine. With one being meticulous and organized whilst the other calculating and perceptive, all sorts of variables during the missions would instantly be analyzed by both of them. Ah, what a frightening duo. Knock. Knock. Outside of a rundown apartment complex, two muscular men wearing a black suit and a black tie knocked on the door of one of the apartments. Who is it? A couple of seconds after the knock was heard, a crisp and pleasant voice echoed from the other side of the door. Ma'am, we are from the Luxious Guild. We are here for your answer regarding the recruitment of your son Ryan Poliv, said one of the men in black suit. Hearing that the individuals were from the Luxious Guild, after a short pause, the sound of rushed footsteps rumbled through the other side of the door. Ah, yes. Clank. Opening the door, a middle-aged lady with glossy black hair and few wrinkles on the corner of her eyes appeared in front of the two individuals dressed in black suits. Trembling, she politely bowed in front of them and said, "Thank you for coming." Nodding his head, one of the two individuals indifferently glanced at the lady before getting straight to the point. "Sure, have you considered our proposal?" Freezing for a split second, the lady tried to hide her trembling hand and curtly bowed one more time. "I'm sorry. He is still 12 years old. I can now that my son is very smart, but I want for him to have a normal childhood." "I see." Nodding his head, the individual on the right looked at the individual on the left. Glancing back, they remained silent for a couple of seconds before nodding their heads. "We understand, ma'am." "Ah, really?" Looking up, and seeing the two men dressed in suits nod their heads, the middle-aged lady sighed in relief. "Thank you very much for you and Kiowa." Vroom. Before the lady could finish speaking, an overbearing pressure bore down on her. Instantly she fell on the ground. "I guess we have to do this the hard way, don't we?" Staring at the lady on the ground, one of two individuals dressed in a suit glanced at the entrance of the house. Peeking his head from behind the door, a young child with black hair looked towards the two individuals dressed in black standing in front of the door. His eyes soon landed on his mom, who was on the ground unable to move. Shocked, he couldn't help but scream. "Mom. Is that him?" Staring at the young kid peeking from behind the door of the house, the two individuals looked at each other. They soon smiled. Noticing their expression, Ryan's mom couldn't help but look towards Ryan as she shouted. Ryan closed the door. Do it. Bam. Blocking the door with his foot, a large shadow cast over both Ryan and the middle-aged lady. "Ma'am, I think you need to put more thought into th. Oh my, would you look at this?" Just as the lady was about to despair, disrupting their conversation, a cheerful voice entered everyone's ears. As two arms hooked on the shoulders of the two individuals dressed in black suits, a youth with jet black hair and blue eyes leisurely looked at them with a warm yet leisurely smile. "My friends, how about you try to recruit me instead? I am very good with the sword." The author's POV. Chapter 91, When Everything Falls into Place, 4. A day prior to my meeting with Ryan. Sitting inside of a cafe, frowning, I looked through the files that Small Snake had sent me. Honestly, although I teased and abused Small Snake quite a bit, I couldn't deny how capable of an individual he was. Within a day I had every little detail regarding Luxius I could ever hope to have. From the top members to the lowest members. I had information on basically everyone. If that wasn't all, Small Snake also sent me a long list of information regarding the guilds that they were currently not on good terms with. And as I looked through their enemy guild, one of them caught my attention. Sword of Light. Another gold-graded guild that was located not far off from Luxius. However, compared to the other guilds that Luxius had conflicts with, their enmity against Luxius wasn't actually between the guild masters. In fact, they didn't really have any significant problems with each other. However, one piece of info caught my attention. Conflict between the sons of both guilds' guild masters. Jacob Reed and Nolan Valdev. This was a very interesting piece of news. A very interesting one. The conflict wasn't between the two guild masters but in fact between their sons, or more like the guild heirs. Moreover, as I looked through the information regarding their conflicts, a smile appeared on my face. A plan had already started formulating inside of my mind. Without pause, I discarded every other file other than that of Luxius and Sword of Light. I had decided that they were now going to be my main focus. Taking out a piece of paper, I drew two circles. One signaling Luxius and the other signaling Sword of Light. Like a mind map, I drew little branches coming out from each circle. With each branch, I would write small notes. Like that, for the next 2 hours, I continuously drew different branches coming out from each circle. Soon the paper was filled to the brim with branches, and a massive web of information was detailed on it. Phoo. Putting my pen down, I took a deep breath. I was done. I had written everything important regarding both guilds and branched out the information in hopes to find as many links as possible between the two, and midway through, I found what I wanted. The one link that would allow me to flawlessly execute my plan. Hee hee. Chuckling, I bit the tip of my pen. If everything went as I predicted, Luxius will completely forget everything regarding Ryan and his potential, allowing me to recruit him peacefully. Once again looking at the mind map, a smile appeared on my face. Everything was starting to come together. My goal wasn't to destroy a gold-graded guild. No, that would bring too much unnecessary attention. My goal right now was to change their current focus. Redirected it away from Ryan but towards somewhere else. Putting the mind map away, I texted Small Snake and asked him to purchase a few things. I then proceeded to send him 4 photos with instructions on them. Send. Sending the photos to Small Snake, I took Ryan's profile out and checked his current situation. Soon, my eyes landed on an important piece of information. Target has made an appointment to meet with Luxius at Target House on November 25, 2055 early morning. November 25th. Isn't that tomorrow? Checking the date, I realized that tomorrow Ryan would be meeting with Luxius. That works. Pausing and checking my phone, I realized that tomorrow was the perfect time for me to start the plan that I had come up with. Scrolling through my phone, I quickly booked an air train for tomorrow. Cleaning up my desk, I stood up and left the cafe. I guess I won't be sleeping tonight. Back to the present. My friends, how about you try to recruit me instead? I am very good with the sword. Hooking my arms around the two individuals wearing black suits, I winked at them. Who are you, KHH? Flabbergasted, the two individuals tried to turn their heads to get a better look at me, however, smiling, I increased the grip on their necks. Like hell was I gonna let them see my face filled with charm. KHHH. Feeling the grip on their necks tighten, the two individuals struggled to breathe. Desperate, using both arms, they tried to pull my arm away from their necks. As they pulled, veins appeared on top of their foreheads. Yet, despite how much they struggled, my arms wouldn't budge. As time passed, the weaker their struggle became. Just as they were about to give up, one of the two individuals caught sight of something hidden beneath one of the sleeves of my arms. An emblem of a bull with a cross. And as soon as he saw the emblem, the air around him intensified and he fully released his G-ranked pressure. Almost as if he had regained all of his energy. Futile effort. Noticing the change, I shook my head. Now that I was F+ ranked, such low pressure didn't even tickle me. Lowering my head, I looked at the two men in between my arms. Fellas, let me be honest with you, I'm dirt poor at the moment, please put in a good word to your boss. I really can't afford to be unemployed at the moment. Struggling to speak, one of the two individuals looked at me and said, KHIKNOW Hosen, YOU. What? Lowering my head to better understand what they were saying, I innocently looked at the two individuals in between my arms. Their faces were now incomparably red. STKHH. As my frown deepened, I lowered my head even further. Hey, say something, I can't hear you, Hearing nothing, glancing at them, I soon noticed that their eyes had become white. They passed out. Releasing my grip on the two individuals, their bodies fell on the ground with a large thud. 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 Scratching my head, looking at the two individuals on the floor, I couldn't help but say, I guess I held onto them a little bit too tightly. With me being a rank higher than them, they were totally helpless. I guess ranks do make that much of a difference, I mean, they couldn't even put up a fight against my grip. With that, a smile appeared on my face as I glanced at Ryan, who was hiding behind his mom. Are you guys okay? Seeing me look at them, the mother and son flinched slightly. Smiling apologetically, I extended my hand to help them up. I'm sorry you had to see that. Warily glancing at my hand, the mother moved forward and hid Ryan behind her. Why you, what do you want from us? Not minding their apprehension towards me, I looked at Ryan, who was hiding behind his mother, and awkwardly said, well, how should I say this, I'm also here to recruit Ryan. YOU. You're the same as them. Glaring and pointing at me, Ryan's mom desperately hugged Ryan, trying to protect him. Please don't misunderstand. Please hear my offer out first. Noticing the situation turning out for the worst, I raised my hands and backed off. It was better if I didn't push it. Whilst still holding Ryan in between her arms, the mother spoke. WE won't accept any offer. Please leave. Okay. Seeing how hostile they were towards me, I made my way out of the house. I knew that negotiating with them at the moment would end up being fruitless. I'll leave this here. Check it out if you have time. But of course, just because I was leaving didn't mean I was giving up. Taking out a file from my dimensional space, I placed it on the ground. Glancing at Ryan and his mother, I pointed towards the file. In case you're bored, I left the contract that I was planning on offering Ryan. If you choose to accept my offer, please call the number that I left inside of the papers. If you wish to refuse, just ignore everything that happened, though I do have to say that working with me would be much better than working with Luxius. Finished with what I wanted to say, grabbing the two individuals on the floor, I opened the door with my foot and headed out. All right, I've wasted enough of your time. Goodbye now. Clank. Closing the door behind me, a faint smile appeared on my lips. Glancing at the two individuals in my arms, I shook my head and brought them with me. I still had a use for them. The Author's POV. Chapter 92, When Everything Falls into Place, 5. Kaisa, Headquarters. Phew. Sitting on my desk, I blew on the bangs of my hair. As I was doing so, from time to time, I would check my phone. Nothing yet, huh? After 10 minutes of continuously checking my phone, I sighed. It looks like things are progressing more slowly than I predicted. What are you doing? Small Snake. Glancing towards Small Snake, who had just arrived, I leaned back on my chair and continued to blow on the bangs of my hair. Noticing my attitude, Small Snake didn't even bother to ask what I was doing. Has everything with the Luxius Guild been sorted? Checking my watch, without glancing at Small Snake, I said. Not yet, should be soon though. How soon? Thinking for a bit, I said, I'd say in about an hour or so. Raising his brow, Small Snake couldn't help but ask, an hour? Then is everything that is happening outside all because of you? With my eyes half open, I briefly glanced at Small Snake. I guess you could say that. Frowning, Small Snake paused before he said. Just what the hell did you do? It's a bit of a long story. Vroom. Tapping on my phone, a huge chessboard appeared before me and Small Snake. Fancy a game of chess while I recount? To be honest, I'm on the verge of passing out from boredom. Glancing at the chessboard, Small Snake sighed and sat in front of me. Chess. Regular rules. Yup. All right. Nodding his head, Small Snake stared at the chessboard before him. He was currently using the black pieces, thus he would have to start after I moved my piece. So, tell me what you did. What I did. Staring at the chessboard for a brief moment, I looked at Small Snake and smiled. I just moved the pieces one at a time. Frowning, Small Snake couldn't help but shake his head. I don't know what you mean by that, but you seriously have a chess complex. I do. I guess you aren't wrong. Taken aback for a moment, I couldn't find any words to refute his statement. Now that I thought about it, I really did, didn't I? From the guild name and structure to the way I talked, I made a lot of chess references. I guess I really did have some sort of chess complex. Tack. Sighing, moving my pawn forward, I smiled. Let's begin. Standing in line, outside of a black sedan, parked below a tall skyscraper, 5 individuals wearing black suits and sunglasses stood upright. Each individual vigilantly looked towards their surroundings as none dared to speak a word to each other. It was evident that they were professionals. Clank. Coming out from the skyscraper entrance, a youth wearing an Iron Designer t-shirt and black pants headed straight for the black sedan. As he walked down the stairs towards the sedan, the bodyguards couldn't help but notice an elegant yet prideful bearing coming out from the youth's body. Almost as if he was a lone untouchable phoenix. Nodding his head towards the guards, the youth opened the door of the car and entered. Following his entrance, from all sides, the guards too entered the car. Sitting at the front, wearing white gloves, the driver of the car turned around and politely smiled towards Nolan. "Young master, where would you like to go?" Playing with his phone, Nolan disinterestedly said. "Not sure, do you have any suggestions?" Smiling, the driver said. "Young Master Nolan, according to some sources, it seems that Jacob from the Luxus Guild is currently staying in the Ola Bar in Palter Street not so far from here." Listening to the information, taking his eyes off of his phone, a smile appeared on Nolan's face. "Jacob is there. That is indeed interesting. All right, let's go there." Nodding his head, a trace of amusement appeared in Nolan's eyes. "I'll show that bastard why he shouldn't have messed with me." Smiling, the driver nodded his head and turned his focus back on the wheel. Boom. Soon the car silently sped into the distance. Tack. Moving a pawn forward, Small Snake glanced at me and asked. "So you disguised yourself as a driver? Is that the identity of one of the people you asked me to make a face mask of?" Tack. Moving another one of my pawns, I nodded my head. Spot on. Tack. Staring the chessboard, and pondering for a second, Small Snake moved a pawn and nodded his head. I sort of get the gist of the situation now. Tack. Without glancing at him, nor showing any sign of shock, I raised my brow and asked. "Oh. What did you figure out?" Tack. Placing another pawn down, Small Snake looked at me before saying. "Your plan is to instigate a conflict between the two guilds by creating conflict between the two heirs. This way, both guilds will have an excuse to fight each other, but although the plan sounds solid, it's honestly full of holes." Tack. Placing my pawn down, I smiled at Small Snake. "Well, you aren't entirely wrong about the fact that I am indeed trying to create a conflict between the two of them, but that isn't my main goal." Pausing, Small Snake glanced at me and frowned. "Really? Then what is it?" Smiling, I didn't respond. Tack. Taking the knight, I moved it upwards in an L shape. "You'll see soon." After a 20-minute drive, arriving at the location, Nolan alongside his 5 guards exited the vehicle. So did the driver. Vroom. 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 As they inched closer, the loud rumbling music coming from the nightclub reverberated throughout the whole surroundings, shaking the ground beneath them. "Please excuse me." Just as they were about to enter the nightclub, a bulky individual stopped them at the entrance. "Please provide an ID." He dash. Just as one of the guards was about to protest, raising his hands, Nolan shook his head and took out an ID from his pocket. "Here." Handing it to the guard, Nolan smiled politely. A couple of seconds after, coming back from having checked the card, the guard flusteredly gave it back to Nolan. Mr. Nolan, I apologize for not recognizing you immediately. Haha, it's okay, no worries. Laughing, Nolan took the card back and made his way towards the club. Entering the nightclub, Nolan looked left and right until finally, after a couple of seconds, he managed to spot a youth sitting in the corner of the place. Walking up to the youth, Nolan smirked as he looked down on him. Fancy seeing you here, Jacob. Looking up, a fairly handsome youth with fair skin and sharp brows looked in Nolan's direction. Recognizing him, clenching his teeth, he hatefully spat. Nolan. Hee hee, long time no see, buddy. As the two stared at each other, sparks appeared between their eyes. Soon the air around the nightclub started becoming tense. Nolan and Jacob had only known each other for about a year. However, during that year they met, they had continuously targeted each other. Always trying to look for trouble for one another. Their conflicts didn't particularly start big. In fact, the reason why they fought in the first place wasn't anything particularly exciting. The reason why they disliked each other was simply because at the time they met, they were each with a friend who had some enmity with the other's friend. Naturally, since they were their friend's enemies, they were their enemies too. With that, standing up for their friends, the two stood on the opposite side of each other. And thus they became enemies. And ever since then, their conflicts have never ended. Because they were both respectively heirs to a gold-graded guild, their pride was naturally inflated. As such, until there was a clear winner between them, they were always destined to fight against each other. Thus, since their first meeting, they had always been trying to look trouble for one another until the other gave up or admitted defeat. Standing up, Jacob's figure, which was more robust and taller than Nolan's, looked down on him. You came here to redeem yourself for your last loss. Raising his brow, Nolan looked up at Jacob. Smirking, he said. What loss? I clearly remember beating the crap out of you. Remember how you broke your nose? As Jacob and Nolan stood face to face, their auras progressively intensified. Stop making stuff up. Oh. I remember taking photos of your pathetic self. If you want, I can send them to you later. You dare. You think I'm scared of you? Voom. Voom. Soon, 2F-ranked auras swept the nightclub. Instantly, the atmosphere around the bar became tense. Both sides were currently on a standoff, but neither moved. Everyone that was in the bar, sensing the atmosphere, either left or distanced themselves from Nolan and Jacob. Around them, the guards stood firm. Just as both sides were about to make a move, a subtle clicking sound resounded across the space. Following that, the whole room died white for a split second, almost as if a bolt of lightning had descended. Click. Following the clicking sound, an arm flew in the air. Soon after, the room froze. No one spoke a word. Everything happened so fast that no one caught sight of what happened and who did it. Too fast. Koo-wah. Soon a blood-curdling scream broke the silence as Jacob held onto the area where his arm used to be. Young Master Jacob. Panicked, the guards around Jacob immediately ran in his direction. Taking out a couple of potions, they immediately fed them to him in hopes of stopping the bleeding. You dare. With bloodshot eyes, holding onto his arm, Jacob glared intensely towards Nolan. His eyes were that of pure undisputed hatred. Killing intent permeated the air. What the tea wasn't us. Shocked, Nolan took a few steps back. He really had no idea what had happened. One moment Jacob was standing before him, the next his arm flew in the air. How dare you? Glancing towards his guards, Jacob, using his only hand, pointed towards Nolan and shouted. Attack them, it's an order. I don't care what you do, make sure he dies. Yes. Heeding Jacob's order, the guards instantly attacked. Boom. Soon an explosion reverberated across the club as dust and debris flew everywhere. Creak. As explosions reverberated throughout the nightclub and the two parties fought, exiting from the back of the nightclub, wearing a black suit and white gloves, Nolan's driver exited the nightclub from the back door. Smiling, he mumbled. Mission accomplished. Extending his hand over his head, a mask slowly peeled off of his face. Claw. Underneath the moonlight, his real face was revealed. Smirking, Nolan's driver walked over to a secluded area of a parking lot and removed a big white sheet revealing a slick black bike. Jumping on top of the bike, the individual sat on the bike and sped off in the distance. Vroom. However, as he took off into the distance with his bike, what he didn't notice was a small camera secretly hidden in the corner of the nightclub. It recorded everything. From the moment he exited the building, to the very moment he took off his mask and the face beneath it was revealed. The author's POV. Chapter 93, When Everything Falls into Place, 6. Hold up. Just as Small Snake was about to place his piece down, he frowned. Did you just say that a camera caught you taking off your mask? Lazily supporting my chin with my arm, I nodded. Yup. Confused, Small Snake tilted his head and frowned. Isn't that bad? I mean dash. Seeing Small Snake's confusion, before he could continue, I cut him off. Well, that is if what they saw was my real face. Coming to an understanding, Small Snake's brows relaxed. Ah, so you didn't reveal your face. Nodding my head, I pointed at the board, urging for him to continue. Don't you remember the photos I sent you? The ones you used to create multiple face masks for me. Tack. Moving one of the pieces, Small Snake nodded his head. Yeah. He did. Although he didn't know who the people in the photos were, Small Snake remembered receiving a text a couple of days ago regarding the creation of a couple of skin masks. With current technology, creating such high-detailed masks didn't take much, so he had it promptly made the next day. Seeing that he understood, I lethargically said. Well, I was wearing two at that time. Tack. With one of my eyes closed, I moved my bishop diagonally across the board. I see, and whose mask does the other one belong to? Hearing his question, I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I answered with another question. Small Snake, who do you think stands to gain the most from the conflict between Sword of Light and Luxius? Getting answered back with a question, Small Snake thought for a moment before hesitantly saying. Air, the ones who wins between them. Shaking my head, I lightly smiled. Tut, not necessarily true. Tack. Moving one of his pieces, Small Snake frowned. Then who? Smiling, I glanced at him and said. Have you ever heard of the term, the mantis stalks the cicada unaware of the oriole behind? Nodding his head, pausing and thinking for a moment, Small Snake's eyes widened. You don't mean? Tack. Yup. Luxius headquarters, 80th floor. Overlooking the city from the tainted windows of the high-rise building, a tall muscular man interlocked his fingers behind his back. A cold and indifferent aura exuded from his body. Briefly glancing towards the bottom of the building, towards the busy streets of Ashton City, the tall man coldly spoke. Victor, has there been any news regarding the two people we sent to recruit the kid that caught my eye? No, we tried contacting them, but so far, we haven't heard from them yet. Standing a few feet away from the muscular man, a man dressed in a simple gray suit curtly replied. Hearing the reply, after a short pause, the tall man's brows furrowed. Strange. Noticing the guild master thinking, the gray suit individual asked. Guild master, what are your orders? Bang. Just as the guild master of Luxius, Patrick Reed, was about to speak, the sound of the door smashing reverberated across the space as an individual wearing a black suit hurriedly ran into the room with a report in his hand. Emergency report. Young master has gotten into a conflict inside of a nightclub. Frowning, an invisible pressure instantly bore down on the individual that had just rushed into the room. KHHH. Thud. Feeling the pressure bearing down on him, the subordinate that had just barged into the office felt his knees give out as he knelt on the ground of the office space. Obviously angered by the sudden intrusion, Patrick coldly spat as he glanced at his subordinate. You better have a good reason for suddenly barging into my office like that. How is this piece of news deemed to be an emergency? Speak your next words carefully. Gulp. Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, trembling, the individual started speaking. Why young master got into a conflict and... Gulp. Hesitating, swallowing another gulp of saliva, the poor man continued. Low st in arm in the process. Vowum. Bam. Instantly a tremendous pressure shrouded the whole office space as the furniture around the room was obliterated into dust. Papers flew everywhere, and the whole room shook. Trembling, Patrick looked towards the kneeling subordinate and slowly said. Repeat what you said, recount me everything carefully. Feeling Patrick's gaze on him, without a second thought, the subordinate nodded his head. Yes, according to the report, Yunji Master Jacob got into conflict with Nolan Valdev, son of current guild master of Sword of Light. Frowning, the aura around Patrick slightly dissipated as he said. Sword of Light. Nolan. Continue. Repeating the words inside of his mind, nodding his head slightly, Persic gestured for his subordinate to continue reading the report. Being told to continue, without a second thought, the subordinate instantly started speaking again. Yes, according to the reports, as the two were in the middle of a conflict inside of the nightclub, out of nowhere, someone attacked Jacob. The result was his arm getting detached from his body. Once again, a massive overbearing pressure started emanating from Patrick's body. Oh. Since when was Sword of Light that impulsive? To think they actually dared to make a move against their son. How daring of Sword of Light. It looks like Sword of Light didn't regard Lucius as an opponent. Clenching his fists tightly, Patrick turned towards Victor, who stood by the side, and coldly said, "Immediately summon all of our high-ranking members. In a week's time, I want everything prepared. Prepare the paperwork. We are going to declare a guild war against Sword of Light." Shocked by the news, Victor's eyes opened wide as he couldn't help but exclaim, "Guild Master." With an expressionless face, Patrick once again stared at the city below him. "It doesn't matter if the opponent is another gold-grade guild. If you hurt my son, I'll make sure to return everything with interest." Tack. Placing my pawn down, I glanced at Small Snake and smiled as I spoke. "And so the Guild Master of Lucius will most likely prepare for a guild war." Taken aback, Small Snake's hand, which was holding onto a pawn, paused. Looking at me, he couldn't help but ask, "A guild war?" "Yes." Nodding my head, I confirmed. If everything went according to my predictions, as soon as the Guild Master of Lucius found out what had happened to his son, he would without a doubt start preparing for a guild war. This was inevitable. He only had one son. Now that he lost an arm, he, without a doubt, would instantly try to fight against the person responsible for crippling his son. And the only way he could do that was through a guild war. A guild war was something that the central government established to legally resolve conflicts between guilds. Because several conflicts between guilds in the past led to a lot of deaths, the central government had no choice but to establish guild wars as a means to legally allow guilds to fight each other without suffering any casualties. This setup was specifically made to avoid deaths, as at the moment humanity could not afford to lose any more talented warriors. With the pressure coming from all sides, the more heroes they lost, the worse they would be. Therefore, after a lot of discussions, the central government set up a system called guild wars. In guild wars, like the name suggested, guilds would compete with each other. And this conflict would all be done inside of a virtual world. After investing billions and billions of U, the central government managed to create a state-of-the-art virtual machine that could replicate 99.99% of reality. The closest to reality to date. Through fighting in the virtual world, the guilds could compete against each other under fair rules without losing any member of their guild. The winner of the guild war would gain something that was agreed upon prior to engaging in a guild war. Moreover, with the central government acting as the intermediary, there was no need to fear for the other party not holding up on the agreed terms. "Are you really sure he's going to declare a guild war so suddenly?" Small Snake, who was once again confused, looked at me and said, "I mean, if the guild master wasn't stupid, he would instantly notice a few irregularities in the events that had happened in the nightclub. I mean, there are a lot of things that don't make sense if you think about it rationally." Smiling, I lazily yawned. "Wapam, you're spot on. After a bit of thinking, the Guild Master of Lucius, Patrick Reed, will instantly realize that something was wrong with the events that led to his son losing an arm." Nodding his head, Small Snake curiously glanced in my direction. "If he realized that, wouldn't that mean your plan failed?" Tack. Moving my queen a few squares diagonally, I smiled. "Fail? No, that's exactly what I'm hoping will happen. Victor, pause everything that you've been doing." Frowning, after a couple of hours of deep thought, Patrick realized that something didn't add up with the report he received from the incident. He had let his emotions get the best of him. Because of how much he loved his son, as soon as he heard of what had happened to him, he immediately mobilized the guild into partaking in a guild war. He didn't even check the full details of the situation. Something just doesn't add up to this story. The heir of Sword of Light shouldn't be this impulsive. The more Patrick thought about it, the more the story didn't add up. There was no way the son of the current guild master of Sword of Light would be impulsive enough to suddenly resort to removing the limb off of a direct heir of another gold-graded guild. No. He was an elite trained since birth. There was no way he would be irresponsible to the point he would actively seek to fight against the whole guild directly. Yeah, this definitely didn't add up. As they were both heirs of gold-graded guilds, they should obviously know when to attack and when to retreat. Turning towards Victor, who was wearing the same gray suit as before, Patrick ordered. Victor, get someone to collect all of the reports regarding the incident. From eyewitnesses to cameras and anything that can be useful in getting a better idea of what happened. He was going to get a real look at what had happened. If he caught sight of anything remotely suspicious, he would immediately get to the bottom of it. He was not going to let someone who hurt his son get away with it. Guildmaster, everything regarding the incident is here. 30 minutes after issuing the order, Victor walked next to Patrick and handed him a tablet. Thank you. Taking the tablet, Patrick looked through the files and numerous footage. As he looked through the files, Patrick's expression would change from time to time. Click. Soon, after reviewing the data for an hour or so, he turned off the table and solemnly said, "Most likely, someone is trying to instigate a conflict between us." What? Standing next to Patrick, Victor couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Are you serious? Solemnly nodding his head, Patrick placed the tablet down on his desk. Yes. Then we need to report this to Sword of Light, maybe they know something regarding the situation. Freezing half-sentence, Victor's brows twitched as he recalled something. Actually, now that I recall, I remember hearing that young Master Jacob, in his rage, used the artifact that you had given him and almost crippled Nolan. Right now, according to the reports, he is bedridden with no signs of waking up. Without saying a word, Patrick fell into deep thought. It seems like both sides suffered losses. His son lost an arm, whilst Nolan, the heir of Sword of Light, also seemed to have been heavily injured. If Zach Valdev, the current guild leader of Sword of Light, didn't lose his mind, he too would have reached the same conclusion as him. Someone had instigated the conflict. Reaching this conclusion, Patrick's aura intensified. Now, I really am curious as to who's daring enough to mess with two gold-graded guilds. Glancing at Victor, in a deep voice, Patrick ordered. Take all of the video evidence of the conflict and analyze it frame per frame, don't miss anything. As long as something looks suspicious, immediately report it to me. There definitely might be something we overlooked. Nodding his head, Victor took the tablet and left the office. As you wish. The Author's POV. Chapter 94, When Everything Falls into Place, 7. Knock. 30 minutes after Victor left, Patrick heard someone knocking on his door. Come in. Entering the room, Victor bowed slightly and said, Guildmaster, as per your orders, we've looked through all of the camera footage from the night where the incident happened. Pausing, looking at Patrick straight into the eyes, Victor solemnly said, We found something. Nodding his head, Patrick spoke. Show me. Tapping on the holographic function of the tablet, a 3D video replayed in front of Patrick. The camera angle pointed towards a rather secluded parking lot area near the nightclub. Pointing at the video, Victor said, In one of the video cameras, we managed to spot a suspicious individual exiting the venue right after the fight started. The most interesting part regarding that individual is that he was wearing a skin mask. Frowning, Patrick couldn't help but glance at Victor as he asked. A skin mask. That is indeed suspicious. Did you manage to find out his identity? Right now, he didn't really care about the details. He just wanted to find the guy responsible for crippling his son. Nodding his head, using the holographic function of the tablet, a profile appeared before Patrick. We've managed to identify the identity of the masked man that was responsible for taking the young master's arm. With reference from the database from the system, we managed to identify the man as Patrick Marr. He is currently working as a manager for a construction firm not so far from here, and other than that there were no notable discoveries. However, once we dug further we were able to find a crucial piece of information. Pausing slightly, Victor looked at Patrick and slowly said, The company he is currently working for is a subsidiary of Bull's Wrath. Nodding his head from time to time as he heard Victor talk, pausing for a moment as if something clicked inside of his mind, Patrick fell into deep thought. Bull's Wrath, I see. Repeating the name a couple of times, a trace of a smile appeared on his face. That indeed sounded suspicious. Bull's Wrath. If Patrick thought about it, the guild that would benefit the most out of Luxious fighting against Sword of Light would definitely be them. They too were a gold-graded guild, and compared to the other gold-graded guilds in the vicinity, they were the ones that were closest to both Sword of Light and Luxious. Moreover, both Luxious and Sword of Light had conflicts with Bull's Wrath. I see. As his thoughts paused there, the frown on his brows deepened. His instincts told him that Bull's Wrath were indeed the ones responsible for instigating the conflicts between Sword of Light and them, however. He didn't have enough evidence. Just because the culprit worked for a subsidiary that was under Bull's Wrath control didn't mean they were actually working for them. They could very well be hired mercenaries in disguise. This would mean that this was planned by someone else and that they were trying to insinuate that Bull's Wrath was behind it. Just who is it? The more Patrick thought about it, the more questions emerged in his mind. Just who? If only he had more evidence. Knock. Knock. Snapping Patrick out of his thoughts was the sound of someone knocking on the door. Regaining his usually cold bearing, Patrick coldly said, "Come in." Opening the door, wearing a black suit, an individual came in. "Master, we have received another report." "Tack. What did you do with the 2 guys you brought here last time?" Pausing for a moment, my hand froze for a split second. It took me a couple of seconds to understand what Small Snake was talking about. That's right, Small Snake was the one who helped me carry the bodies of the 2 individuals I met at Ryan's house. Them. Nodding his head, Small Snake asked once again. "Yeah, what did you do with them?" "About that, they sort of escaped." "Huh." "Yup. They escaped. When I returned from my trip to Ryan's house, I brought them to a relatively isolated storage space and tied them up with a rope. I wanted to interrogate them and all, but... well, I had to go to the bathroom. By the time I returned they were already long gone. Very negligent on my side." As I recounted what had happened, noticing Small Snake's darkening face, I coughed in embarrassment. I obviously didn't let them go that easily. I am confident with regards to my knot tying skills, and honestly, I tried really hard to look for them. 10 minutes in, I had to give up as I really couldn't find them." Bam. Smashing my fist against the desk, I angrily spat. "Damn, how could I have been so negligent?" Sighing, Small Snake shook his head as he said, "Sigh, your acting is really terrible." Opening my eyes wide, a hurt look appeared on my face. Wiping the corner of my eye, I replied with an aggrieved tone. "What are you talking about? Why are you coming at me like that, Small Snake? How could you belittle me like that?" Tack. Shaking his head, moving a pawn, Small Snake gestured for me to move. "Your move." Snorting, I replied. You changing the topic won't change the fact that I'm pissed. Victor, contact the Guild Master of Sword of Light." "As you wish." With his hands interlocked behind his back, Patrick stared at the window of his office. To think Bull's Wrath was so audacious and ambitious enough to think that they could play the Oriole without getting caught. How audacious indeed. Smirking, Patrick couldn't help but think to himself. Their plan might have actually succeeded if not for the fact that they had been negligent on their end. Just moments prior, he received a report detailing the fact that 2 of his subordinates had just come back heavily injured. After healing them, they instantly recounted everything that had happened. From how they were trying to recruit Ryan, to suddenly finding themselves ambushed and how they miraculously escaped. For the most part, Patrick didn't care. However, a certain section of the report intrigued him. I saw that the aggressor had an insignia of a bull with a cross inside of his sleeves. Bull with a cross. That was Bull's Wrath's insignia. From then, Patrick read the report more seriously and got a better idea of what had happened. Apparently, someone wearing Bull's Wrath insignia stopped them from recruiting the kid that they had a slight interest in. Although it didn't prove that Bull's Wrath was responsible for the conflict, it was enough for Patrick. He didn't believe in coincidences. He had already sent the information to Sword of Light, now it was time to wait. He will definitely make them pay for what they've done. Tack. Moving one of the chess pieces on the board, Small Snake couldn't help but ask. "So basically you redirected everything you did to Bull's Wrath?" Tack. Nodding my head in confirmation, I moved another one of my chess pieces. Glancing at the board, apart from a few pieces, almost everything was gone. "Yeah, pretty much." Frowning, Small Snake asked. "Why Bull's Wrath though? Out of all the guilds he chose to use as a scapegoat, why Bull's Wrath?" He was genuinely curious. Smiling, whilst waiting for Small Snake to make a move, I said, "There are multiple reasons why I chose Bull's Wrath. Geographically they are the closest guild next to Sword of Light and Luxius. They hold a grudge with both Luxius and Sword of Light. They are famous for being overbearing and taking whatever they wanted." Pausing slightly, my eyes narrowed. "But out of all the reasons, the most important out of all points that I have just listed, is that they too showed interest in Ryan." And you don't touch what I already set my eyes on. Ah. Nodding his head, Small Snake somewhat understood. Apart from the last point, everything he said was reasonable. Be it geographically, reputation-wise, and relationship-wise, Bull's Wrath was the ideal guild to put the blame on. That he didn't disagree with. As his thoughts paused there, Small Snake couldn't help but be impressed. The level of detail in the plan was something that even he, someone who has seen a lot, couldn't help but be impressed with. Tack. Placing his piece down, Small Snake asked. Can I ask you one more question? Go ahead. What happens after Sword of Light and Luxius beat Bull's Wrath? Won't they just focus their attention back on Ryan then? Hearing Small Snake's questions, a smile appeared on my lips. Shaking my head, I laughed. Ha ha ha, you forgot something, Small Snake. Pausing, I slowly said. Human greed is boundless. Even if Sword of Light and Luxius win, you didn't forget that both of their heirs are currently heavily injured, right? Shaking his head, Small Snake said. No. Seeing that he was following, I continued. The alliance is merely temporary. By the time both guilds swallow Bull's Wrath, they will soon both be at each other's throat fighting for what little remains of Bull's Wrath as an excuse to weaken each other. Though on the surface it was an alliance, it was merely one made out of convenience. As soon as Bull's Wrath was out of the picture, they will immediately fight against each other. By then, no matter who wins, they would be so busy fighting each other that years would have already have passed. And during the time they were fighting, Ryan would already have been long forgotten by them. In the end, what I did was something that would have inevitably have happened in the near future regardless of my interfere dash. Ding. Stopping me mid-sentence, my phone rang. As soon as it did, a smile appeared on my face. Ah, finally. Checking my phone, and confirming that it was indeed the message I was looking for, my smile deepened. Sword of Light and Luxius have jointly declared war against Bull's Wrath. Tack. Moving my queen diagonally to the Black King, I said. Checkmate. Game over, White won. Staring at the chessboard that displayed the large "You won" sign, I couldn't help but glance at Small Snake and say. Ah, don't you just love it when everything falls into place? The Author's POV. Chapter 95, Return, 1. Currently, talking about the Northern District, Sword of Light and Luxius, two major gold-graded guilds, have officially declared a guild war against Bull's Wrath. Although the reason for the sudden war is unknown, sources say that it has to do with the heirs of both respective gu. Click. Turning off the TV, lazily sitting on my chair, I glanced at Small Snake. Small Snake, how's the stock market faring? With his eyes glued on two large monitors filled with numbers, Small Snake apathetically replied. Just as you predicted, Bull's Wrath stock has declined hard. MHHH, all right. Leaning back on my chair, I lazily nodded my head. Prior to everything that had happened, using all the money I had left, I shorted Bull's Wrath stock. Knowing that their stock would plummet once Luxius and Sword of Light officially declared a guild war against them, I shorted their stock. And with that, I solved my money problem. So not only did I resolve the issues with Ryan, but I now also resolved the money situation that had been annoying me for the past week or so. In just one move, I managed to resolve two of the problems that had been bothering me lately. Like the saying goes, two birds with one stone. And honestly, couldn't be more content with the result. Although I do have to point out the fact that what I did was definitely illegal. Yup. Well, as long as I don't get caught. You ain't guilty till proven guilty. I'll stick with that rationale for now. Now that you've sorted out Luxius, what about Ryan? Him. Yeah. Thinking for a moment, I half closed my eyes and lazily responded. Nothing really, we just wait for them to call. Taking his eyes off the monitors, Small Snake frowned as he glanced in my direction. Wait, you just went through all of this trouble to get rid of Luxius off of Ryan's back, and right after solving everything you suddenly start to become passive. What? Seriously looking at Small Snake, I nodded my head. Pretty much. I mean, it's not that I was being passive. It's just that I was that confident in what I proposed. Anyone with a sane mind would without a doubt agree to the terms I proposed. I mean, the terms I proposed were just too good to be turned down. Not only did I include a hefty sum of money as a salary for Ryan, I also included added benefits such as short working hours and free housing. What more could you ask for? Actually, looking back on the terms I proposed, my heart couldn't help but start bleeding. For a 12-year-old kid, I really did go overboard. But I don't regret it. It was worth the investment. Ah, wait, what if they thought it was a scam? Oh, shit. Recalling the fact that my mercenary group was only ranked with no missions or accomplishments to its name, I slowly started frowning. Yeah, now that I thought about it carefully, without a doubt they might assume this might be a scam. Thinking thus far, my face couldn't help but darken. I miscalculated. Sigh. Staring at my continuously changing face, Small Snake couldn't help but sigh. I'm not even going to ask about why your face is currently looking like that, my instincts are telling me to ignore you completely. Pausing, glancing at his watch, Small Snake couldn't help but say. Anyways, shouldn't you be heading back home? Me. Why? Snapping me out of my thoughts, I frowned as I looked at Small Snake in confusion. Why would I go back home now? Did he want me to leave? Rolling his eyes, and sighing once again, Small Snake said. Don't you have to return to the lock today? Asterisk 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 asterisk. Bam. Throwing as many curses as I could muster, I quickly packed up everything that I could find on my desk and made a run for it. The fact that today was the day I was supposed to return to the lock completely slipped my mind. I was careless. Right. Stopping right before the entrance of the building, as my feet were jogging in place, looking at Small Snake, I reminded him. Before I leave, make sure to contact Leopold. Since we made enough money from this ordeal, hiring him shouldn't be a problem. In the meantime, since we're in the same school, I'll take care of recruiting Ava, so just focus on recruiting him. Turning his attention back on the monitors, Small Snake nodded his head. On it. All right, I think I've said enough, gotta go, contact me if you need anything. Without waiting for Small Snake's reply, I dashed out of the building. My family was probably already waiting at the train station. Couldn't afford to waste any more time. Ren, hurry up or you're going to miss the train. Commying. Running towards the train platform, I heard my mother shout coming from the other side of where I was, near the air train that I was supposed to board. Huff, huff, I made it. Quickly arriving in front of the doors of the train, with my arms on my knees, I heavily gulped for air. Approaching me, with Nola in her arms, my mother asked. Ren, why are you so late? Huff, huff, nothing really, I was just busy with work and stuff. Work? Ah, well, with the subsidiary and stuff. I wasn't lying. Because I was so busy dealing with the mercenary stuff, I completely forgot about the fact that today I was returning to the lock. My 1-month holiday was finally over. Well, to call it a holiday would be an overstatement, as I was busy almost every day with the mercenary group and stuff, not once did I properly rest. Good job. Nodding his head, my father smiled in appreciation. He was happy that me, his son, was taking what he had said seriously. Sigh, all right, but don't overdo it. Somewhat getting the gist of what had happened, my mother helplessly sighed. Putting Nola down and extending her arms in my direction, she said. Give us a hug. All right. Smiling, I walked forwards and hugged everyone. This went on for a solid minute as they refused to release me from their clutches. Beep. 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 Oh, it's time for me to go. Hearing the beeps coming from the train, signaling that it was about to depart, I finally freed myself from their hugs. Entering the train, I looked at my family once again. Smiling as I stared at them happily waving at me, I couldn't help but feel my heart grow warm. 1 month. Alto short, I couldn't help but feel a bond as I stared at them. Most of the emotions probably came from the previous Ren, but I had a feeling that a part of it was also mine. As I stared at them, the image of my previous family started overlapping with theirs. A faint smile appeared on my lips. Thank you for everything. By Big Bodar. Glancing at Nola, who was waving at me with a sad face, I smiled. Squatting down to her height, I couldn't help but say. Nola, try saying my name. Not Big Brother but Ren. Now that I was about to go and was probably not going to see her for a while, I wanted for her to call me by my name at least once. She always referred to me as Big Brother, but never actually called me by my name. It's Big Brother Ren, say it. Big Bodar RRMHH. Nodding her head, Nola tried to say it, but halfway through, her face couldn't help but scrunch up as she couldn't pronounce the R. Seeing her struggle, calmly nodding my head, I slowly repeated my name. Repeat with me R-E-N. B-N. Instantly my smile froze. My body shook along with my smile. With the most gentle voice I could muster, I carefully said, Nola, it's Ren with an R, don't forget the R Okaha. Clank. Right before I could finish, the doors to the train started closing, sending me into a panic. No, I can't be having this. Damn it, doors, don't close now. Bam. 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 In desperation, I started pounding at the door as I looked at Nola, who was cheerfully smiling and waving at me. Through the gap of the closing doors, I shouted, Nola. It's Ren with an R, don't forget the R. Actually, anything other than Ben is okay too. Waving, Nola smiled and said, Bye big brother Ben. Clank. Destination, Central District Lock. Bam. 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 Pounding at the door with all my might, I screamed as the train slowly picked up its speed. No, Nola, no. 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 Hey, can you keep it down? Can't you see that there are other people here? Just as I was in the midst of my despair, an annoyed voice resounded from the back of the train. Standing up, a beautiful young girl with short auburn hair glared in my direction. I was trying to sleep when you're shouting suddenly Shut it, lady, I'm in a life and DEA, Just as we were both about to shout at each other, turning around and seeing each other's faces, we froze. After a solid couple of seconds of silence, I couldn't help but break the silence. Just why? Just why in the world was Emma standing in front of me? The author's POV. Well, I somehow managed to recover from the mental damage I received earlier. But as if the fact that my little sister couldn't pronounce my name was enough, I suddenly found myself on the same train as Emma. Yeah. Emma Rochefield, one of the main protagonists and daughter of the mayor of Ashton City. Sigh. To make things worse, she was now sitting next to me with both of her eyes closed. Seemingly asleep. It felt as if I was sitting on needles. Whoom. Shut up. An hour into the train ride, I couldn't help but yawn. But to Emma, who was sitting next to me, my seemingly quiet yawn instantly caused a reaction from her. The reason for her outburst was most likely due to the fact that she was looking for an excuse to pick a fight with me from the very beginning. And as soon as she saw the opportunity, she shot back at me. I guess she still held a grudge against me for what I did to Jean, couldn't blame her though. I'd show a similar reaction if I found one of my friends suddenly being held by the throat. Not that I had any, maybe small snake, but in all honesty I'd probably laugh first. Briefly glancing at her, rolling my eyes, I retorted. What? That's your 8th yawn. You counted. Who in the world would count how many times someone yawned? That's not normal. I can tell what you're thinking. No. I don't have the habit of counting when someone yawns, but it's different when every time you yawn you stretch and nudge all the way over to my side. Makes sense. That indeed sounded like something I would do. Sorry. You should be. Since I was in the wrong, I rightfully apologized. But after hearing her response, I started regretting it. In the end, I didn't say anything else and just leaned back on my chair. Wasn't worth the hassle, that was my original train of thought. However, as the train ride continued, I couldn't help but frown. Noticing my change in attitude, Emma angrily asked. What? I had originally planned to ignore her and wait for the train to smoothly arrive at the lock after noticing her grumpy mood, but a thought suddenly occurred to me. Glancing at her, I asked. Hey, why are you taking the train? How's that any of your concern? Smiling, unbothered by her sharp response, I said. You didn't forget, did you? Forget what? As she spoke, each of her words was covered in thorns. Almost as if she was suppressing herself from lashing out at me. Pretending to be oblivious to it, I lazily said. That you owe me one. Though she still looked angry, her mouth couldn't help but shut. She was at a loss for words. No matter how much she wanted to rebuke, no words came out of her mouth. She knew I was right. That's that and this is. I guess your life is only worth that much, fair enough. GHHH. Fine. Backed into the corner, Emma could only angrily stomp her feet on the ground. She, like Amanda, didn't like to owe others favors, and thus after I reminded her of the fact that I had saved her life, she could only lower her head in defeat. Sulking, she said. What do you want to know? Smiling inwardly, once again, I asked. Why are you taking the train? Though my question seemed random and intrusive, there was a very specific reason why I asked her this. Emma was rich. Let me rephrase. Emma Rochefield was filthy rich. So rich that she could probably buy my parents' guild 100 times over with her allowance alone. This meant that she didn't have to take the train to get to the lock. No, in fact. Considering how doting her father was, there was no way that she would be allowed to take a train to the lock. Moreover, as I looked around her, she didn't have any bodyguards around protecting her. This was something that her father would normally never allow. And if my hunch was correct, this meant one thing. In short, my father is currently not in Ashton City and my uncle told me to take the train back to the lock. I see. As I suspected. Though I ignored most of what she said, my ears picked up an important piece of information. Father not in Ashton City, and uncle told me to take the train back to the lock. Though she didn't go into detail, I already knew who her uncle was. Theodore Rochefield. The second in command in the Rochefield household, and Emma's illegitimate uncle. Also the main antagonist of the Emma route. The route which causes her to fall in love with Kevin. Problem was, this event, according to my calculations, shouldn't have started till a further 2 months from now. A month after the midterms. This meant that the timeline has changed. Frowning, I couldn't help but once again realize that the plotline had been distorted. The real question this time was it my fault or was something beyond my grasp manipulating the story from the dark? Could it perhaps be the one who sent me to this world? If so, what was their goal, and why me? In the end, for the remainder of the train ride, I sat in my seat immersed in my own thoughts. Completely forgetting about the fact that Emma was sitting next to me. Ryan, why are you looking at those files? Nothing, I was just curious. Inside a rundown apartment, a young boy was carefully looking through a stack of files. As he read through the files, his eyes couldn't help but wander towards the TV. The news channel was on. Currently, talking about the Northern District, Sword of Light and Luxius, 2 major gold-graded guilds, have officially declared a guild war against Bull's Wrath. Although the reason for the sudden war is unknown, sources say that it has to do with the heirs of both respective Gu. So it was you. Despite his features looking like that of a 12-year-old, his eyes and expression had no resemblance to that of a 12-year-old child. As his eyes alternated between the TV and the files in his hand, a faint smile appeared on his lips. Recalling the events that had happened a couple of days prior, Ryan couldn't help but think back at the moment where the youth with blue eyes and black hair had come over and got rid of the 2 people sent from Luxius. He didn't think much back then because he was too preoccupied with his mother. But after news of Luxius suddenly declaring a guild war reached his ears, Ryan couldn't help but notice that something didn't add up. The timing. It was exactly a couple of days after he saw the black-haired youth taking those 2 guys from Luxius back with him. Ryan's initial impression of the black-haired youth wasn't all that great. That's because of what he saw on his sleeve. Regardless of what was happening, Ryan was still paying attention to every little detail around him. At first, Ryan did in fact, just like the 2 guys from Luxius, also think that the black-haired youth was from Bull's Wrath, primarily due to how he was able to see the insignia hidden beneath his sleeves. But as he read through the papers regarding his mercenary group, Ryan instantly understood everything that had happened. Moreover, as he looked at the TV, Ryan could more or less determine that everything had been that youth's doing. Or at least he played a part in it. Interesting. It didn't take long for him to get a clear picture of what he did. From how he instigated Luxius and Sword of Light to fight, to how he was able to pin all of the blame on Bull's Wrath. Ryan too came up with a similar plan. In fact, he had many more complicated plans which took less time and were more efficient, but all of his plans carried a couple of critical flaws disabling him from carrying them out. His inability to fight, and his mother. With those 2 factors holding him back, he couldn't find any way to get rid of the troubles that had been coming his way. No matter how much he wanted to put them into action, with his not even G-rank stats, his plans would never work. He was simply too weak. Thus he could only give up and helplessly be put into situations that stressed his mother. He hated that. He hated his own powerlessness. He would always wake up at night cursing at God for giving him a smart brain but no abilities to go along with his brain. Especially since this was a world where strength meant everything. His intelligence and brilliance was hence often overlooked. Flip. 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 Looking through the ridiculous offer that was presented before him, Ryan couldn't help but be tempted. The deal was much better compared to the one offered to him by Luxius. In fact, it was leagues better. Free housing, good salary, short working hours, it was the ideal job. Moreover, remembering how hard his mother was working every day to feed him, Ryan found himself on the verge of signing this paper. However, he stopped himself halfway through. He was too impulsive. He needed to observe more, he needed to understand more, and thus after a short while of thinking Ryan decided that he wouldn't sign the papers. At least not until he determined whether they were trustworthy or not. He couldn't take any chances. Ryan, time for dinner. Hearing his mother calling for him, as if a switch had been flipped, a childish expression appeared on his face. Happily smiling, he shouted, "I'm coming, Mom." The Author's POV. Chapter 97, Midterms, 1. Clink. Bastard. 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 Entering her dorm, Emma furiously threw her stuff on her bed. Her mood couldn't be any worse. How dare you ignore me like that? This was the first time she felt so disrespected. Throughout her whole train ride to the lock, she sat next to the one guy she was most curious about. The guy whom she suspected saved her life back in Hallberg. And she wasn't wrong. He brazenly admitted this fact when he rubbed it all over her face. Just recalling the smirk he had on his face as he openly admitted that fact irked her to no end. Although this annoyed her, it wasn't what truly irritated her. No. What irritated her was the fact that he had completely ignored her after she had answered his question. No matter what she did, he wouldn't respond nor acknowledge her existence. Almost as if she was nothing but air. Ghhhhhh. Just thinking about it irritated her even further. She would definitely not forget this. Rendover. That was his name. Clenching her jaw, Emma swore to herself. You better make sure that the next time I see you I'm not in a bad mood, else. Achoo. Is someone thinking about me? Rubbing my nose, I couldn't help but feel like someone was talking behind my back, and I was pretty sure I wasn't overthinking things. In the first place, with my current body, normal flus shouldn't be affecting me. After thinking for a bit, I just shrugged it off. Meh, who cares? I have other things to worry about. Like training. With exams starting next week, the training center was filled to the brim with students. It was to the point that in order for me to get a decent workout, I had to train late into the night. Whoo! Yeah. The heavy and tired shouts coming from the training dummy sparring areas echoed throughout the whole center. The residual magic power from the spars swept throughout the halls, creating a thick and dense atmosphere. In the gym area of the training center, students could be seen lifting 150 kilograms dumbbells effortlessly. Almost as if they were just holding onto their phones. I too tried lifting dumbbells. However, what I could do was pitiful compared to other students. This was mainly due to the fact that the people next to me were muscleheads. Like, each of their biceps was about the same size as my head. Ridiculous. Weeing. Ugh. Using my phone's vibration as an excuse to stop training, I put down the bar I was lifting. Dizziness immediately came over me as I felt my chest become numb. It seemed 190 kilograms bench press was still too much for my current self. Sitting up straight, I wiped my sweat off with a towel hanging around my neck. I then proceeded to check my phone. The documents are ready, but are you really planning on going through with the terms you've offered to Leopold? It was a message from Small Snake. Ah, it looks like Small Snake has already made contact with Leopold. That's good. I wasn't worried about him not accomplishing the mission as I fully knew the extent of his abilities. With how well connected and intelligent he was, recruiting Leopold shouldn't be a problem. Now I only needed to wait for Ryan. I was sure he was already contemplating my offer. With just a little bit of time, he would definitely come along. With regards to Ava, now that I was back in the lock, I could easily take care of her. Everything needed time though. I wasn't quite going to approach her yet. I first needed to pass the midterms. This was a far more pressing issue as the results could determine my future. You see, I set myself a goal for the upcoming midterms. Top 100. Yes. I didn't misspeak. Top 100. There were several reasons as to why I set my goal to be that high, but it primarily boiled down to two reasons. Facilitate recruitment of people whom I want to join my mercenary group. Buy time for my parents. The first point was self-explanatory. Who would want to join someone's mercenary group when the current leader of the group was only ranked 1550 in the lock? It just didn't make sense. I mean, in all fairness. If someone ranked 1550 approached me and tried to recruit me, I'd probably laugh at their face. Though I doubt Ava was the type of person to do that, she wasn't the only person I wanted to recruit. If I reached the top 100, recruiting people that I wanted would definitely be much easier. The second reason, well, if I reached the top 100, my family could use this to stop the advances coming from the opposition. Not fully stop them, but slow down. With me reaching such a high rank, my parents could definitely use this as leverage when talking to the board members. But well, I knew that their talk wouldn't go anywhere as my talent was assessed as D after all. To them, regardless of how outstanding I was destined to never go beyond D rank. Well, at least that was what was written on paper. In reality, I had no talent cap. Let alone S rank, I could easily go even beyond SS rank. Higher than the current top leaders of humanity. Pausing my thoughts, I frowned. Matthew will definitely be not pleased about this development, but well, it shouldn't be a problem as of yet. I knew he wouldn't move until my parents' guild was fully taken, and with that, I probably bought myself another couple of months. Moreover, with me currently being in the lock, he couldn't even vent his frustrations on me. This was ideal as I really didn't want to go through another annoying situation where Aldrin would take over. Plus, the more time I had, the more I could prepare for my trip outside of Earth. By the time I returned, the curse taking over my parents would no longer be a threat, and old Ren's influence would no longer haunt me. Actually, with regards to the trip, I have to talk to Kevin, don't I, huh? I mean, he was the only person that could go out of Earth whenever he wanted. All thanks to the system he had. With his system, he could travel to any planet he wanted, but it didn't come cheap. Depending on how far he wanted to travel, he had to use a monster core. This alone prevented him from going very far as they were all rare and expensive. Plus, considering the place that I wanted to go, I estimated that I needed to find at least a less than D ranked core. Damn it. Buying it was definitely not an option. I mean, I'd have to have at least 100 million U, and that's with no one making a bid for it. If only the planet the cure was located in wasn't that far off from Earth. In the end, that was only wishful thinking on my end. Just the fact that I didn't need a less than C rank or above core was enough for me to thank the heavens. If it was really above D rank, I may as well just give up. I mean, regardless of how much money I saved up, there was no way I could afford to purchase such high-leveled core in that short of a time frame. It just wasn't something I could do even with stocks. Either way, the planet I needed to go to was called Imora. A planet that used to be inhabited by the orcs. Well, that was until the demons came and took over. Though it wasn't considered their main planet, it was still considered an extremely important planet for them as it was the planet with the most fertile soil, meaning that it was the planet where most of the orcs' food was made. The place was fraught with danger, and if by the time I went there I wasn't at least E ranked, I stood no chance at surviving. That's how dangerous the place was. Dangers aside, I had another problem. How was I going to ask Kevin to bring me there? It's not like I could go to him and say, "Hey, Kevin, my good pal. I want to go to Imora, so bring me there." How did I know you could travel to different planets? Ah, what a silly question. I am your creator after all. Yeah. Not happening. Ding. Ding. Disrupting me from my thoughts was the loud sound of the alarm I set on my phone. Ah, I guess it's time for me to head back. It was already 10 p.m., signaling that it was time for me to wrap up with what I was doing and go to sleep. I determined that for me to be in optimal conditions each day, I had to sleep at least 8 hours a day. Especially since the midterms were now right in the corner. In the morning I would study, and in the afternoon and night, I would train my body. That was my current lifestyle. Couldn't say I liked it, but, well, I needed the good grades. Especially since I had a goal to accomplish. Thus, I went back to the dorm. With regards to the Kevin situation, I'll figure it out after the exams. I still had 4 months to prepare after all. The Author's POV. Chapter 98, Midterms, 2. Lock, Class A, 25. The sound of scribbling pencils rang out in the classroom. Almost all of the students present were hard at work preparing for the upcoming written exams. Arg, why do we have to go through this when we don't actually use this stuff in real life? Of course, there was bound to be at least 1 or 2 students who hated studying. But well, what he said did make sense. Most of the stuff we learned wasn't even useful for those of us who didn't plan on pursuing such a career path. Exams are next week. Study hard, or you're going to have regrets when the results come out. Turning around, a student replied. Yeah, it's not like you'd understand my struggles. Being reprimanded, the student that complained could only grumble to himself as he went back to studying. In the end, it seems like he was just venting out his stress. Lightly glancing at the duo, I shook my head. Regardless of what world you were in, there would always be a guy who hated studying and a guy who loved studying. I was neither. I didn't dislike studying nor did I love it. I just studied for the sake of it. Well, that was what I initially thought. However, looking at the question that was presented before me, I couldn't help but slowly start leaning towards the no-studying group. Suppose a less than D-ranked monster, metal-fanged megalodon, attacked you in the middle of the ocean. How much force do they exert each time they bite, and point out their weak points on the diagram below? Extra point, what is the primary scion flow of the metal-fanged megalodon and what is the fastest speed it can reach underwater? I was stumped. I had no clue where to start. Was this really going to be on the exam? I don't even remember writing about this monster inside of the novel. I mean, there were so many monsters that I had to remember that I could barely even think straight at this point. I understand that they want us to learn this in case we actually met this monster in combat so that we would be able to deal with them accordingly if the situation presented itself. But with current technology, finding the information about the monster shouldn't be hard at all. Just a quick cross-reference with the monster encyclopedia in the app and all the information would be presented before me. Well, in all fairness, I guess it did help in situations where the phone couldn't be taken out or that there was no battery left on the phone. Damn it, world. If you're going to write questions regarding monsters, at least make it so that I knew something regarding them. Don't give me questions on relatively unknown monsters. Ruins the whole point of me being the author and using that as an advantage. Ding dong. In the midst of my rant, at that moment, the bell rang signaling the end of the class. The class was technically a review class, but in reality, it was just a self-study class as there was no professor supervising the students. In any case, as soon as the bell rang, almost all of the students got up from their seats and left the class. It was evident that the majority hated studying. I, of course, planned to follow them back to the dorm. What was the point of studying in a classroom when you had no friends? In the end, apart from Kevin and a couple of other people, everyone left the class. And like that, it was the day of the exams. Surprisingly, I wasn't nervous. Apart from the fact that an artificial lake appeared beneath my feet, I really showed no sign of nervousness. Hey, man, did you cram all night? Yeah, I didn't sleep the whole night. How'd you think you'll do? Not sure, hopefully, I'll pass. Listening to the people besides me conversing, the butterflies in my stomach intensified. I didn't cram. Not because I didn't want to, but from past experiences, I always tended to perform badly when I crammed. Just wasn't something that worked for me. 7:55 a.m. Glancing at my watch, I knew that I had 5 minutes left before the exam. A long line had already started forming by the entrance of the classroom. In front of them, a professor holding onto a tablet patiently waited for the students before doing the register. Fidgeting with my hands, I nervously looked around in hopes of finding something to distract myself from the wait. 5 minutes felt like an eternity. If only I had something that could help me determine what was going to be on the test dash. Pausing my thoughts, my eyes shot wide open. Hold up. Why didn't I think of this before? Quickly rummaging through my bag, I took out a thick red book. Flip. 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 Without skipping a beat, I flipped through the pages of the book. Equals. State the theory of unbounded monster relativity. Write down the proof as well. As Kevin looked through the papers, without pause, he quickly compiled the answers on the white answer sheet in front of him. What degree of control would someone need in order to determine the circulatory flow of their scion link in their body? How much was the link? Equals. Cuckoo. Looking through the red book, I couldn't help but find myself laughing hysterically. Almost like an evil dictator that had successfully completed his plan. Instantly, all of my worries washed away. Cross-referencing with my phone, I quickly memorized everything that I could memorize in that short time frame. It seems like the world had finally taken pity on me. I now had a proper shot at getting a good grade. Student ranked 1550 Rendover. 5 minutes on the dot, the professor called for me. Helpless, I could only put the book and phone away and say, "Present." With that, I entered the exam hall, and as I did, I couldn't help but be reminded of the hellish days when I had to enter the exam rooms back in my previous world. How did you think you did? I think it was all right. I'm confident in my chances of passing. I got a question on Valdev's law, I seriously forgot about it. You go that. I got a question on Zlorav's law. Staring at the students happily conversing as they left the class, a defeated smile appeared on my lips. Every step I took felt as if a solid thick piece of lead was stuck on them. I miscalculated once again. Just when I thought the world was finally answering my prayers, it went and fucked me over like never before. Turns out every student had different questions. Yeah. The greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. Fortunately, I somehow managed to answer all of the questions. However, because I was caught off guard, I lost some valuable time. Now I really had to pray for a passing grade. If I didn't, I'd have to redo the test again later in the summer. And honestly, wasn't too keen on doing that. Especially since I had a lot of things I needed to accomplish. Sigh. In the end, after letting out a long and exhausted sigh, I went back to my dorm. The midterms were far from over. I still had to prepare for the upcoming practical exams. Fortunately, unlike with the theoretical exams, I knew what the next exams were about. Dungeons. Yeah. We had to do a solo run of the school dungeon. The test scores were based on the time it took for students to complete the run. The faster the run, the higher the score. Unsurprisingly, in the novel, Kevin and Jean took the top spot, with timing that went along the lines of 1 hour and a couple of minutes. A stark contrast compared to the average of the other runners who took approximately 2 to 4 hours. True Monsters. The Author's POV. Chapter 99, Midterms, 3. Beep. Beep. In a remote area of the academy, standing in front of a large portal, a group of students nervously stared at the professor before them. Students, please form a single line. As the professor spoke, a thick wave of residual magical energy emanated from the blue portal that was a few meters behind him. Though it wasn't overbearing, it still caused every student present to feel some form of pressure. Cave of Everbloom. That was the name of the dungeon in front of us. It was a multi-layered dungeon, meaning that it had different levels of difficulty, with the highest being C rank, and the lowest being G rank. Because of how the dungeon had different levels, the Lock desperately fought for the ownership of the dungeon. It was the perfect place to train students. With the dungeon having the same layout regardless of the level of difficulty, it was a perfect dungeon to assess students' performance. Moreover, it was also capable of fairly assessing students regardless of their rank. If you were G ranked, you would have to enter the dungeon in G difficulty, and so on with higher ranks. This way, there was no element of unfairness as the monsters and layout were the same with each dungeon difficulty. Thus, in reality, this test was used to assess a student's combat ability rather than talent. Alright, everyone please pay close attention to what I'm saying as safety always comes first. Standing by the side of the portal, gathering everyone's attention back to himself, the professor spoke. Standing behind me is the dungeon that will be used for your practical exam for the midterms. The dungeon, as most of you know, is called Cave of Everbloom, and it's our academy's own dungeon. Pausing and staring at the students before him, the professor continued. For your practical assessment, in order for you to pass, all you have to do is get to the other side of the dungeon. Simple as that, just crossing over is considered a pass. However, for your grade, you will be assessed on 2 things. Raising 2 of his fingers, the professor's tone became stern. Time taken for you to reach the end of the dungeon, and how many monsters you kill throughout the raid. For each extra monster you kill, you will be given an extra point and so on. Pausing once again to make sure that everyone understood, after a couple of seconds, the professor continued. There will be 3rd and 2nd years hidden inside of the dungeon. This is so that in case you find yourself in trouble, they can quickly come to your aid. This is a safety precaution that the school has done to make sure none of you die. Looking at the students before him, the professor's voice turned grave. However, be warned. If the 2nd and 3rd years are forced to make a move, you will either have points deducted from your overall score or you will automatically fail the exam. So don't think that just because your life isn't in danger you shouldn't put the effort in the raid. If you're negligent, that's your score gone. Gulp. Finished with what he wanted to say, the professor noticed a lot of students swallowing a mouthful of saliva. It was evident that most of them were nervous. Not minding it, as he was used to such situations, taking out a transparent orb from his dimensional space, the professor presented it before everyone. This orb here will measure your current rank, so once I call your name, please put your hand on the sphere. Soon after the sphere measures your rank, you will be assigned to your respective dungeon difficulty. Standing a couple of meters away from the professor, my eyes were drawn towards the orb the professor was holding. The orb of identification. A special artifact that measured someone's rank. It was created through the usage of an old dried-up monster core and essentially measured someone's rank through the flow of mana. I won't go too much into detail with regards to how it measures the stats of a person, but in short, depending on rank, the orb will shine different colors. G, blue. F, yellow. E, green. D, red. C, pink. Those were the respective colors that represented a person's rank. Anything above C rank required a different measuring tool, as the orb of identification was merely a tool that measured an approximate rank of a person. It wasn't actually very accurate. Holding onto a black tablet, the professor's stern voice resounded across the space. Student rank 1, Kevin Voss, please step up. Called up, Kevin slowly walked in the direction of the professor. Arriving before the orb, Kevin looked at the professor and asked, "Do I put my hand on the orb?" "Yes." Nodding his head, under every student's anticipated gaze, Kevin placed his hand on the orb. Voom. Unsurprisingly, as soon as Kevin placed his hand on the orb, a tremendous red hue enveloped the surroundings. D rank. That's what the red color symbolized. A rank that no first year should ever come close to. At least not until the end of the first year. Looking around, I could see every student present staring at Kevin's back in shock. Surprisingly, the calmest person was actually Jean, who didn't seem to care about the fact that Kevin was D-ranked. I was honestly pleasantly surprised by this development. Normally Jean would have already been clenching his jaw and glaring at Kevin like there was no tomorrow, but it seems like he really did change, as Kevin told me back in Hallberg. Done. Soon after Kevin removed his hand from the orb, silence prevailed in the surroundings. Everyone was looking at him in utter shock. The professor included. After a couple of seconds, recovering from the shock, the professor spoke. DD rank, student Kevin Voss will go to the D rank section of the dungeon. Not minding the attention he was getting, Kevin nodded towards the professor and headed back to where the students were. Staring at Kevin's figure for a couple of seconds, snapping out of his daze, the professor looked at his tablet and continued. Student rank 2, Melissa Hall, please step up. Students rank 3, Jean Horton, please step up. And so like that, everyone's rank was measured. Apart from Melissa, whose rank was F, Jean, Amanda, and Emma were respectively assigned towards the E graded difficulty of the dungeon. Rank 1550, Rendover, please step up. Finally, it was my turn. Not minding the stares coming from certain individuals, I walked up to the professor who was holding onto the orb. Please put your hand on the orb. Nodding my head, I slowly placed my palm on the orb. Voom. As soon as I placed my hand on the orb, I felt a weird suction force coming from the orb. Soon after, without me needing to do anything, the mana inside of my body circulated. A couple of seconds after the mana inside of my body circulated, a green hue enveloped the surroundings. However, a couple of seconds after the green hue appeared on the orb, it was replaced by a pale yellow hue. Just moments before the hue turned yellow, as soon as the green hue enveloped the place, some of the people around me couldn't help but gasp in shock. It had to be noted that green symbolized E rank. For me, a relatively unknown person, to suddenly show up with E rank stats would definitely surprise everyone. However, the green hue soon turned yellow, indicating that I was F ranked. Because this wasn't the first time this event happened, everyone quickly recovered from the shock, allowing me to sigh in relief. Seems like the orb liked to play tricks on me. Frowning slightly, the professor shook his head and said, Student Rendover, please make your way towards the F area. All right. Nodding towards the professor, I headed back towards where the students were gathered. Fortunately, because the device was not very accurate, it could only measure a relative approximation of my rank. Meaning that people only knew that I was F ranked, but not whether I was F-F or F+. And I liked for it to be that way. Though me reaching F- was still sort of unreasonable, it was still not as unrealistic as me reaching F+. Especially since I was ranked G- a couple of months ago. This was good. Though I had gathered more attention towards myself, it was still not a bad idea for me to make people think that I was weaker than I actually was. This way I could still make people underestimate me. Unlike Kevin, who brazenly showed everyone he had reached D rank. Thinking back, I think it was from this point on that he truly started being targeted by the likes of Gilbert and other jealous students. TSK. This was exactly why I didn't like to expose my strength. Too much trouble. The author's POV. 1, 2, 3, 8, 15, 23, 47, 53. Counting the students present in the line designated for the F-rank students, the professor quickly scribbled something onto the tablet in his hand, and lightly mumbled to himself. That's a significant increase compared to last year's batch. Nodding his head in satisfaction, putting the tablet away, in a stern tone, the professor spoke up. All right, all of the 53 students in the F-level difficulty, please listen up. As I have already explained the rules before, I won't go into too much detail with regards to what you need to do. However, I do have to remind you that you will all be sent to the same dungeon at the same time. Meaning that, yes, you can cooperate with one another. We won't stop you from collaborating with someone since, in real dungeons, such situations often occur. Pausing slightly, the professor squinted his eyes and his voice turned serious. And yes, with the fact that you can collaborate with the other students, it also means that you can also interfere with another person's progress. After all, the person who reaches first also gets an additional bonus point. So, not only do you have to watch out for the monsters inside of the dungeon, but you also have to watch out for the people next to you. Pausing and glancing at all of the students before him, smirking slightly, the professor said. You better watch out, in dungeons, no rules exist. What may seem like your teammate moments before can quickly turn and backstab you when you least expect it. Such situations aren't very rare occurrences inside of dungeons. With dungeons being places that had no cameras, situations where your ally would betray you as soon as the chance presented itself wouldn't be all that surprising. Especially if something tempted them into doing so. As the professor's words flowed through everyone's ears, all the students present took a step away from the person near them. Their eyes were full of vigilance. Human greed was boundless, you never know what would happen if you weren't alert. Glancing at the students who were now wary of each other, a satisfied smile appeared on the professor's face. Enough of that. I'm going to go brief the other students now. You have 5 minutes to prepare yourselves. If you're planning on choosing a teammate, you better choose yours carefully, by now. Finished with what he wanted to say, turning off his tablet, the professor headed towards the next group. Watching the professor leave, with his arms crossed, Arnold glanced at the students beside him. Immediately disdain appeared on his face. None of them were worthy of teaming up with him. In fact, he didn't need to team up with anyone. Arnold was confident no one would be able to beat him. That's how confident he was in his abilities. To him, no one was a competitor. As he was looking at the students, Arnold's eyes soon paused on a certain individual. Snorting to himself, Arnold couldn't help but clench his fists. Humph, to think that Bug has also reached the F rank. Although Arnold was currently F rank, he found it unbelievable that the student he had previously disdained had reached a similar level to his in a mere 2 months. Especially since he had promised young Master Jean before that he would have taken care of him. Time was almost up. Frowning, Arnold couldn't help but recall young Master Jin's odd behavior. He was much nicer than he had ever been in the past. He would no longer beat him to vent out his bad mood, nor was he spoken to as if he was someone beneath him. He almost treated him like an equal. Thinking thus far, Arnold couldn't help but feel his heart thumping in excitement. Acknowledged. That's how the current Arnold felt. He felt that the current Jean had finally acknowledged his hard work and dedication. All of his hard work had finally paid off. Jean now finally treated him like someone who was worthy of following him. Staring at Ren in the distance, Arnold couldn't help but recall the conversation he had with Jean 2 months prior. Before Hallberg. At how Jean wanted him gone. Yes. Since Jean had asked for it, now that he had been acknowledged, he must use anything within his power to satisfy Jean. Be it kneeling down, washing his clothes, to cleaning up bugs. He was prepared to do it. Arnold was prepared to do anything that was asked of him. Staring at Ren in the distance, Arnold licked his lips. You must pay a price for offending someone you shouldn't have. Picking my ear with my pinky, I noticed a couple of stares coming in my direction. Honestly. I couldn't be bothered to check who they were from. My mind was already focused on what was to come. According to what I remembered writing in the novel, this dungeon was located in a cave-like setting, meaning that there wasn't much room to maneuver the body freely. Moreover, the visibility inside of the dungeon was also low. I still vividly remember writing this part of the novel, hence why I knew a lot of what was to come. With Kevin being D rank, the level of difficulty was on a much harder level. Though I didn't know the full layout of the dungeon as I never dwelled too deeply into it, I knew what monsters were present, their weak points, and where the traps were located. This was good. Thinking thus far, I started thinking about what else I could do to optimize my score. I think drifting steps would definitely give me an edge compared to the other students. However, there was a problem. I needed to kill monsters with drifting steps, because the speed increased as time progressed. If each time I ran, I killed a monster, I would definitely lose all the momentum I had gathered. Especially since I couldn't kill whilst run at extreme speeds. This meant that I would lose a lot of momentum every time I killed a monster, which was not good. It also had to be noted that drifting steps was still not in the minor realm of mastery. Meaning that I wasn't very adept at using this skill. This further complicated things. I also had to take into account the fact that I wasn't confident in my written score. With me having wasted a lot of time, I wasn't too sure on how high of a score I could get. I definitely had to score high on this exam. Thus not killing monsters wasn't an option. What do I do? Alright, everyone please pay attention to me. Snapping me out of my thoughts was the loud shout coming from the professor. I will now open the portal. Once you enter, you will automatically be transported towards your designated post. At the entrance of the dungeon, there will be another instructor that will give you some equipment and another short briefing on what to do and what not to do. Pausing, glancing at every student present, the professor's tone became incomparably grave. Please make sure you listen to whatever they say, as it may save your life. No human is perfect. We may not be able to save you on time, thus you must listen carefully to what they tell you, as it might save your life. Glancing at every student present to make sure they understood, the professor nodded. Have a nice trip. Finished with what he wanted to say, glancing towards a staff member wearing a black lock uniform on the right, the professor nodded in his direction. Nodding back, the staff member pulled a lever. Voom. Right after the lever was pulled, the glow around the portal intensified as the residual magical power being emitted from the portal quadrupled in magnitude. The air around us solidified due to how thick the mana in the air was. Staring at the massive portal before him, the professor moved to the side and gestured towards a certain group not so far from where I was. G ranks first. Voom. 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 On cue, after seeing the portals light up, the students standing in line for the G-ranked section entered the portal one by one. As I stared at the students entering the portal, I couldn't help but notice how their group was much bigger compared to the other groups. It seems like there were a lot of G-ranked students present. Like that, for the next 5 minutes, students would enter the portal one by one in a single line. Looks like everyone entered, please change the dungeon level. After making sure that every student had entered the portal, glancing towards the left, the professor gestured towards the staff member on his right to once again switch the dungeon grade. Nodding his head, the staff member once again pulled the lever. Voom. Soon after, the blue hue surrounding the portal intensified. The air around the portal further thickened, and solid threats of mana slowly sank their way into the portal. It was obvious that the portal difficulty increased. Without glancing at the portal, the professor glanced towards his tablet and said, F ranks, off you go. Voom. 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 Right after his words entered the students' ears, one by one, the F-rank students entered the portal. Foo. Glancing at the students who were entering the portal, taking a deep breath, and staring at the large portal before me, I too stepped into the portal. Voom. Ah, let's get this over with.